You know the feeling of lying on a stretcher with broken ribs and the taste of blood in your mouth? The first call I got was not to ask if I was alive. It was my mother demanding $4,200 immediately because her credit card was declined. That is when I realized the truth. I was not her daughter, I was just a recurring bill. But my grandpa had one move that changed everything. My name is Bella Phillips, and the first thing I realized when I woke up was not that I was alive, but that I was incredibly, inconveniently thirsty. The second thing I realized was the pain. It wasn't a sharp sensation, not yet. It was a heavy, crushing weight, as if gravity had decided to focus all its attention solely on my chest. I tried to inhale, but my ribs screamed in protest, a jagged reminder of the steering wheel that had introduced itself to my torso just an hour ago. The air in the Ridgeview Trauma Center tasted like rubbing alcohol and old pennies. That metallic tang blood coated the back of my throat. I blinked, trying to clear the haze from my eyes. The fluorescent lights overhead were aggressive, buzzing with a sound that felt like it was scratching the inside of my skull. I turned my head to the side, a movement that took more effort than lifting a car, and saw the cardiac monitor tracing green peaks and valleys. Beep, beep, beep. It was the only proof that time was still moving forward. My daughter. The thought hit me harder than the airbag. Where was she? Panic surged, spiking the green lines on the monitor, setting off a faster rhythm. Then, the memory trickled back through the concussion fog. She was safe. She was with the babysitter. I had dropped her off before the store run, before the intersection, before the black SUV ran the red light and turned my sedan into a piece of abstract art. She was safe. I repeated it in my head like a mantra. She is safe. She is safe. Then, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a video call. The phone was sitting on the metal tray table next to a kidney dish, the screen lighting up the dim corner of the trauma bay. It vibrated against the metal, a harsh, rattling sound that grated on my nerves. I squinted at the screen. The name flashing was Mom. A wave of instinctual relief washed over me, followed immediately by a wave of nausea. Mom. She would know what to do. She would tell me it was okay. I reached out, my hand trembling uncontrollably. My fingers were stained with dried blood and grease. The nails chipped. It took me 2 tries to slide the answer button because my coordination was shot. Mom, I croaked. My voice sounded like gravel grinding together. Mom, The screen filled with the pristine, high-definition face of Marla Sutton. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pale with worry. She was perfectly made up, her lipstick a sharp crimson, her hair coiffed into that immovable helmet of blonde she spent $300 a week to maintain. Behind her, I could see the blurred hustle of an airport terminal. Finally, she snapped. Her voice wasn't warm. It was tight, the way it got when a waiter brought her the wrong wine. I have been calling you for 10 minutes. Bella, do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to stand here while the line holds up behind me? I blinked, my brain struggling to bridge the gap between my reality-broken ribs, blood, trauma room, and hers. Mom, I was in an accident. The car. Bella, listen to me. She cut me off. Leaning closer to her camera, I could see the pores on her nose. I am at the check-in counter. I am trying to upgrade to business class because my back is killing me. And the card was declined. Declined. Bella, the agent is looking at me like I am a pauper. I lay there, the breath wheezing in my chest. What? The transfer, she hissed, lowering her voice but increasing the intensity. I need you to transfer $4,200. Right now. I am not flying economy to Cabo. It is 6 hours. I stared at the ceiling tiles. One of them had a water stain shaped like a map of Florida. Mom, I'm at Ridgeview, the trauma center. I think I broke my ribs. I can't. Oh, for heaven's sake. Bella. Marla rolled her eyes. I actually saw her roll her eyes while I lay strapped to a gurney. You are talking, aren't you? If you can hold the phone, you can open the banking app. Don't be dramatic. I have people waiting behind me. Just move the money. My card is not allowed to be declined. It is bad for my credit score." The monitor beside me began to beep faster. The nurse, a sturdy woman with kind eyes who had been adjusting an IV bag, turned to look at me, concern etching her forehead. She stepped closer, checking my vitals, but I waved her off weakly. "Mom!" I tried again, tears pricking my eyes not from pain, but from a sudden, hollow realization. "I might have internal bleeding. The doctors are coming back in a minute," Marla huffed, shifting her weight. "Well, do it before they get there. Look, if you are going to be unconscious or in surgery, this is exactly why you should have signed that power of attorney paper I sent you last month. If I had control, I wouldn't have to call you while you are laying there moaning. It would be so much less trouble for everyone." The world stopped. The beeping of the monitor seemed to fade into a dull hum. The pain in my ribs, the throbbing in my head, the smell of blood, it all receded, leaving only her voice echoing in the silence of my mind. "If you are unconscious, you should have signed the paper. It saves trouble." She didn't ask if I was going to live. She didn't ask who was watching my daughter. She didn't ask if I was scared. She was annoyed that my potential coma might inconvenience her vacation plans. I looked at my hand holding the phone. There was a smear of dried blood on my thumb. It was dark, almost black. It was my blood. Life inside me. And the woman on the screen. She wasn't my mother. Not really. A mother is safety. A mother is the first line of defense against the world. Marla was just a recurring invoice. She was a subscription service I'd been paying for since I got my first paycheck at 16. "Bella," Marla barked. "Are you freezing? The signal is fine on my end. $4,200. Now, don't make me miss the priority boarding." My voice was different now. The gravel was gone, replaced by something colder, something brittle. "I'm opening the app." "Good girl," she said, her shoulders relaxing visibly. She turned away from the camera to smile at someone off-screen, probably the ticket agent. "Just a moment, just a technical glitch with my bank." She lied smoothly to them. I lowered the phone from my face but kept the call active. I wanted her to hear this, or maybe I just needed her to be there as a witness. I switched apps. The banking icon was blue, a familiar shade that usually brought me anxiety. I tapped it. Face ID recognized me despite the bruising, which was a small mercy. The numbers loaded. I had the money. I had saved it for a down payment on a safer car. Ironically, or for my daughter's preschool tuition next year, it was sitting there, ready to be deployed. I navigated to the settings menu. For years, since I was 21 years old and landed my first corporate job, Marla had insisted on being an authorized user on my main checking account. She called it safety. She said, "What if you get into trouble and need me to access money for you?" she said. "It is what families do. Bella, we support each other." Support. I looked at the transaction history while I scrolled toward the settings. Airline ticket, $800. Spa resort, $350. Boutique, $1,200. She hadn't supported me. I was the support. I was the foundation she built her lifestyle on. While I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment and clipped coupons for groceries, I found the tab, Overdraft Protection Authorized Users. There was her name, Marla J. Sutton, status active, privileges full access. My thumb hovered over the toggle switch. "Bella," Marla's voice tinny from the phone on my chest. "Did you send it? The agent is holding my boarding pass." I looked at the nurse. She was watching me closely now, sensing the shift in the room's energy. She saw a woman on a stretcher, broken and bleeding. Marla just saw a malfunctioning ATM. I didn't owe her this. I didn't owe her my safety. I didn't owe her my daughter's future. I tapped the toggle. A pop-up window appeared. The text stark against the white background, "Revoke access for Marla J. Sutton, this will decline any pending transactions and remove all card privileges immediately." Are you sure? Was I sure? I thought about the last time I asked her for help. It was 3 years ago. I had the flu. 103 degrees fever, and needed someone to drop off soup. She said she couldn't come because it was her yoga night and she didn't want to catch my germs. I thought about the $4,200. That was 3 months of rent. That was 6 months of groceries. I pressed confirm. The little wheel spun for a second, and then a green check mark appeared. Access revoked. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, separate from the broken ribs. It was a release, like a corset had been cut off my lungs. I hadn't realized how hard it had been to breathe for the last decade until this very moment. I picked up the phone again. "Bella," Marla asked, checking her watch. Well, I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me and felt absolutely nothing but a profound, exhausting pity. I tapped the red button and ended the call. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was mine. I let the phone slide from my hand onto the sheets. The nurse stepped forward, her face soft. "Honey, are you okay? Your heart rate spiked there." I closed my eyes. The pain was coming back now, roaring in like a tide that had receded only briefly. My side throbbed with a ferocity that made me gasp. My head pounded. "No," I whispered, the tears finally leaking out of the corners of my eyes. "No, I'm not okay. But I think—" I took a shallow, hitching breath. "I think I just stopped the bleeding. The real bleeding." The nurse adjusted the blanket over my shoulder. "You rest now. The doctor is on his way." "Nurse," I asked, my voice barely audible. "I'm here. My name is Jenna." "Jenna," I said. "It hurts now. Like, really hurts. Can you give me the medicine? I think I'm ready for it." "I'll get it right now," Jenna said, patting my arm. "You hang in there, Bella." I lay there, staring at the water stain on the ceiling again. I felt lighter, broken. Yes, battered, yes, but lighter. I had just cut the anchor that had been dragging me down since I was a child. Then, the phone on my chest buzzed again. A single, short vibration indicating a text message. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't look. But old habits are etched into the bone, deeper than any fracture. I lifted the phone one last time. It was from Mom. Card declined. "Fix it. Don't fake death." I stared at the words. "Don't fake death." A laugh bubbled up in my throat, turning into a cough that sent spikes of agony through my ribcage. It was the most absurd, cruel, perfect thing she could have written. It confirmed everything. If I had died on this table today, her only regret would have been that she couldn't use my fingerprint to unlock the banking app. I let the phone drop to the floor. It clattered loudly, face down. I didn't care if the screen cracked. I didn't care if it broke into a million pieces. "Jenna," I called out, my voice stronger this time. "Coming, sweetie," she called from the hallway. "Take your time," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm not paying for her flight anymore." I closed my eyes and let the darkness of the room take me. For the first time in my life, I was alone in the hospital, and I was terrified. But as the darkness crept in, I realized something else. I was free. And that was worth every cent of the $4,200 I had just kept for myself. But as I drifted off, I didn't know that the text message was just the opening shot. I didn't know that by pressing that button, I hadn't just canceled a card, I had declared war. And Marla Sutton was not the kind of woman who lost a war without burning the whole village down first. The pain medication the nurse gave me was heavy. It did not just numb the shattered ribs, it slowed time down. It turned the ceiling tiles into moving clouds and made the steady beep of the heart monitor sound like a distant drum. But while my body felt like it was floating in deep water, my mind was sharpening. It was dragging up files from the archives of my memory that I had deliberately mislabeled for years. We call it love, we call it family duty, but lying there, staring at the fluorescent lights, I finally found the right word for it. It was a subscription. I closed my eyes and let the drug pull me back. Not to the accident, but further back. I needed to understand how a woman ends up lying in a trauma center, bleeding, yet worried about her mother's credit rating. You do not wake up one day and decide to be a doormat. You are woven into one, thread by thread, over thousands of days. I was 6 years old the first time I learned the currency of Marla Sutton. I had drawn a picture at school. It was a terrible drawing. Just stick figures and a lopsided sun. But I was proud of it. I ran to her when she got home, thrusting the paper into her hands. She was on the phone. She didn't even look down. She just pushed the paper aside and pointed to the kitchen, signaling me to be quiet. 2 days later, I brought home a report card with a gold star for perfect attendance and high marks in reading. Marla hung up the phone. She knelt down. She smiled that dazzling, camera-ready smile and hugged me so tight I could smell her expensive perfume Chanel and Cold Ambition. She took me for ice cream. She told the neighbors about my gift. The lesson was instant and permanent. Bella the person was annoying. Bella the achiever was valuable. If I wanted to be seen, I had to be useful. If I wanted love, I had to earn it. I spent the next 15 years perfecting the art of being a trophy. I got the grades. I won the awards. I solved her problems. When her second husband left, I was the therapist. When she crashed her car, I was the one who lied to the insurance company about where it happened. I was not a daughter. I was a fix-it kit with pigtails. Then came the money. I remembered the day clearly. I was 21 years old. I had just landed my first real corporate job at a marketing firm in the city. It was not a fortune, but to a girl used to scraping by, it felt like millions. I took Marla out to dinner to celebrate. We were at a nice Italian place, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who scraped the crumbs off the table between courses. Marla looked beautiful. She reached across the table and held my hand, her eyes shimmering with what I thought was pride. "I am so proud of you, Bella," she had said. "You are finally standing on your own 2 feet. I beamed. "Thanks, Mom. It feels good." Then came the pivot. It was so smooth, I didn't even feel the blade go in. "You know," she sighed, looking down at her wineglass. "It is scary, though. The world is so unstable. I worry about you managing all this new responsibility, and I worry about myself, getting older, not having anyone to lean on if things go wrong." "I'm here for you, Mom," I said instantly. The programmed response. "I know you are," she smiled. "That is why I was thinking, maybe we should link our accounts just as a safety net. You know, authorized coverage. If you are ever stuck somewhere and lose your wallet, I can help. And if I ever have an emergency, just a tiny emergency, I won't be stranded. It is what families do. Bella, we protect each other." Safety net. It sounded so responsible. It sounded so adult. I signed the paper the next day. I added Marla J. Sutton as an authorized user on my primary credit card and set up overdraft protection from my savings to her checking account. I thought I was signing a document of trust. I was actually signing a lease on my own life. At first, it was subtle. "Oh, Bella, I accidentally used the wrong card for groceries. I will pay you back next week." I never saw the money, but I didn't ask. It was just groceries. It was $70. You don't invoice your mother for milk and eggs. Then it was the utility bill. They were going to cut the power. Bella, I was terrified. $300. Then it was a medical emergency that turned out to be a cosmetic dermatology appointment. $600. By the time I was 25, the accidents had stopped being accidents. They became a monthly rhythm. If I didn't see a charge on my card by the 15th of the month, I would actually get anxious, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Lying in the hospital bed, I did something I had never allowed myself to do before. I did the math. My brain, usually foggy with denial, was crystal clear. 8 years, maybe 9, the airline tickets, the loans for businesses that never launched, the clothes she bought because she needed to look professional for interviews she never went to, the rent assistance, the car repairs. I tried to tally it up. Average of $3,000 a month. Sometimes more, sometimes $5,000. Multiply that by 12 months. Multiply that by 9 years. I stared at the white ceiling, and the number floated there in invisible red ink. $324,000. And that was a conservative estimate. If I added the one-time bailouts, the time she crashed my car and I paid the deductible, the time she needed a new laptop, it was closer to $500,000. $500,000. I had paid $500,000 for a mother. And what did I get for that investment? I got a woman who called me while I was bleeding on a stretcher to complain about business class seats. The realization made me want to vomit more than the concussion did. I hadn't been supporting her. I had been paying a salary. I was her employer. She had turned motherhood into a service, and I was the premium subscriber. As long as the payment went through, I got the good daughter package smiles, hearts on Facebook, texts that said, "Love you, sweetie," but the moment the payment failed, service terminated. The most sickening part was the timing. I started to see a pattern I had ignored for a decade. 3 years ago, I got a promotion, a 10% raise. I called her, excited. 2 days later, her roof started leaking. The repair cost exactly the amount of my new annual bonus. Last year, I got a tax refund. The next week, her car transmission blew up. The mechanic's bill was within $50 of my refund check. She knew. She sniffed out money like a shark smells blood in the water. She didn't just take what she needed. She took what I had. She ensured I never got ahead, never built a cushion, never became independent enough to realize I didn't need her. Financial grooming. The term popped into my head. I must have read it in an article somewhere. It is when someone slowly normalizes financial abuse until the victim thinks it is their duty to be robbed. I thought about my daughter. She was 3 years old. She was safe at the sitter's house. I imagined her lying in this bed. I imagined her tiny body hooked up to these machines, her ribs broken, her face bruised. If I were boarding a plane to Paris and I got that call, would I ask about money? I would burn the airport down to get to her. I would run the whole way if I had to. I would give every cent I owned to the doctor who could make her stop hurting. The thought of asking her for a credit card transfer while she was gasping for air was so alien, so monstrous, that it physically hurt my heart. That was the difference. That was the smoking gun. I loved my daughter for free. Marla loved me for a fee. I am not ungrateful, I whispered to the empty room. Testing the words, they felt strange. I had told myself, I am grateful every day of my life. Grateful she raised me alone. Grateful she sacrificed. I am not ungrateful, I said louder. I was programmed. I was a vending machine she had installed in her house. She pushed the buttons, guilt, duty, fear, and I dispensed cash. A chill ran down my spine, colder than the air conditioning in the trauma unit. A memory surfaced. It was from 4 months ago. My grandfather, Grandpa Walt. He was Marla's father, but they were nothing alike. He was a retired mechanic, a man who spoke in grunts and short sentences and had hands that looked like old leather. We were at a barbecue for the 4th of July. Marla was holding court by the pool, drinking a margarita and telling everyone about her successful daughter who takes such good care of her. Grandpa Walt had pulled me aside near the grill. He handed me a burnt hot dog, his way of showing affection. He chewed on his cigar for a moment, looking at Marla laughing across the yard. Then he looked at me. His eyes were sharp, blue steel under bushy gray brows. "Bella," he had said, "you got a good head on your shoulders." "Thanks, Grandpa." I had smiled. He didn't smile back. He leaned in closer, his voice low so Marla wouldn't hear. "Let me ask you something. You sign anything for her? Anything big?" I had laughed. A nervous, dismissive laugh. "Oh, you know, Mom. Just helping her manage some bills. She is not great with technology." Grandpa Walt hadn't laughed. He just stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Technology ain't her problem, kid. Appetite is. You be careful. A hungry dog don't care if it bites the hand or the meat." Then he had walked away. "Did you sign anything?" At the time, I thought he was just being a grumpy old man. Now, the question felt like a prophecy. What did he know? What had he seen? My phone buzzed again. I flinched. I picked it up, expecting another demand from Marla. But it wasn't her. It was a notification from my bank, a security alert. Attempted login from new device iPhone 15 Pro, location Chicago O'Hare Airport. She was trying to hack into my account. She wasn't just asking, she was breaking and entering. She knew my passwords. Of course she did. I had written them down for her, in case of emergency. The anger that flared up in me then was not hot. It was ice cold. It was the kind of anger that clarifies everything. I needed to protect myself. I needed a gatekeeper. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Jenna. Jenna wasn't just the nurse who had given me the pain meds. I had realized it when she said her name earlier. Though the shock had buried the recognition, Jenna was my friend from college. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years. But she was the head nurse here at Ridgeview now. She was the one person who knew Marla almost as well as I did. Jenna had been there the night of my 21st birthday when Marla threw a fit because the restaurant didn't sing happy birthday to her for birthing me. I opened the text thread. Me, Jenna. Are you on shift at the front desk or in the back? Jenna, I'm floating. Checking your charts now. Your scans look stable. Honey, no internal bleeding, just the fractures. You're lucky. Me. Listen to me. This is important. I paused, my thumb hovering over the screen. This was the final bridge. Burning it meant there was no going back. If I sent this, I was officially declaring Marla an enemy of the state. I looked at the bank alert again. Attempted login. I typed, me. My mother, Marla. She might come here. She is bringing a lawyer, or she will try to charm her way in. Jenna, okay me. If she comes, don't let them in. She is not here to visit. She is here to get my phone. Jenna, say no more. I'm putting a flag on your door. No visitors per patient request. I'll tell security she's a stress trigger. Me. Thank you. And Jenna. Jenna, yeah, me. She will scream. She will say she has rights. She will say I'm confused. Jenna Bella. I've been a head nurse for 10 years. I eat screaming mothers for breakfast. Rest. I've got the gate. I lowered the phone. The tears finally came, hot and fast. I wasn't crying because I was hurt. I was crying because for the first time in 30 years, I was the one deciding who got access to me. I had canceled the subscription. But as I lay there, clutching the phone like a weapon, I knew this wasn't over. Marla was at the airport, angry and unfunded. She wouldn't just go home. She would come here. And she wouldn't come alone. She would come with the full force of her entitlement, and she would try to break down the door I had just locked. Let her come. I closed my eyes and pictured the balance on my bank account. $4,200. It was the price of my freedom, and for the first time, I was ready to fight for it. The room was quiet, but it was a deceptive kind of quiet. It was the silence of a held breath before the plunge. Jenna slipped back into the room. Not with the brisk, noisy confidence of a head nurse on rounds, but with the stealth of someone avoiding a sniper. She let the heavy door click shut softly behind her, cutting off the low hum of the hallway. Her face was tight, her lips pressed into a thin line. She moved to the side of my bed, checking the monitor without really looking at it. She is here, Jenna said. Her voice was barely a whisper, low and urgent. And she is not alone. Bella, she is at the main intake desk right now. I can hear her from here. She is threatening the triage nurse with a lawsuit if they do not let her back immediately. She keeps screaming about family rights and medical proxy. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline punch through the haze of the painkillers. It was a sharp, clarifying chemical reaction. The fear was there. Yes, but it was being rapidly overtaken by an icy resolve. Family rights. It was a phrase Marla used like a battering ram. She thought biology was a backstage pass that granted her access to every part of my life, regardless of how many doors I locked. She cannot come in, I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my ribs. I told you, if she comes in, she is going to try to take the phone. She needs the biometric login. Jenna nodded, her eyes scanning the hallway through the small glass window in the door. I know. Security is holding her at the double doors for now. But she is causing a scene. She is making sure every patient in the waiting room knows she is a distraught mother being kept from her dying daughter. It is a performance. Bella, and the administration hates a scene. They might cave just to shut her up. I thought fast. I needed a shield, a wall that was thicker than just a nurse's refusal. I needed protocol. Hospitals run on fear of liability and fear of infection. The sign, I said, pointing a trembling finger at the cabinet where they kept the isolation supplies. Jenna, put up the yellow sign, the one for infection precaution, droplet precaution. Tell them my white blood cell count is compromised, or tell them I have a fever of unknown origin. Just make it official. Jenna looked at me, a slow dawn of understanding breaking across her face. If you are under isolation protocol, visitors are restricted by law. Even family, they would need to gown up. It slows them down. It gives us a valid medical reason to stop them. Exactly, I whispered. Put the sign up, and Jenna, do not stop them completely. Just slow them down. I need them to come in. Jenna frowned, pausing with her hand on the cabinet door. What you just said. I need them to come in, I repeated, closing my eyes for a second to focus. If you block them at the desk, Marla goes home and spins a story about how the hospital kept her away. She plays the victim. She wins the narrative. I need her to walk into this room. I need her to show her hand while the cameras are rolling. I need her to think I am out of it. Jenna stared at me for a long beat, measuring the risk. Then, she gave a sharp nod. She was not just a nurse. She was a friend who knew exactly what kind of monster we were dealing with. She grabbed the yellow placard from the drawer. Stop. Contact precautions. Check at nurse station, and slid it into the plastic holder on the outside of my door. Okay, Jenna said, coming back to the bedside. The trap is set. But you need to look the part. If you are awake and chatting, she is going to start screaming at you immediately. If you want to catch her, you need to be the bait. I understood. I reached up and pulled the nasal cannula, the oxygen tubes, back into place, fitting the prongs into my nose. I adjusted the bed, lowering the headrest until I was lying almost completely flat, a position that made my broken ribs scream in protest. But I gritted my teeth and bore it. Dim the lights, I instructed, and turn the volume down on the monitor. Make it sound critical. Make it sound like a room where someone is fighting to stay here. Jenna moved efficiently. She reached over and tapped the screen of the cardiac monitor. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep softened to a faint, ominous pulse. She went to the wall switch and killed the main overhead fluorescence, leaving only the small, amber reading light above the bed. The room instantly shrank, becoming a cave of shadows and blinking machinery. Perfect, Jenna whispered. She checked her watch. I am going back out. I will tell the guard to let them pass after he makes them sign the log. I will make sure the hallway camera is tracking the door. Wait, I said, grabbing her wrist gently. Who is with her? You said she isn't alone. Jenna hesitated. It is Marla and Tessa. My stomach turned over. Tessa, my younger sister, 3 years younger, and 10 years more dependent. Tessa had never left the nest. She just expanded it. She lived in Marla's shadow, eating the scraps of attention Marla threw her way, learning that helplessness was a currency. If Tessa was here, it was because Marla needed a witness or an accomplice. And, I asked, anyone else? A man, Jenna said, her voice dropping lower. Suit, briefcase, slicked back hair. He does not look like a friend. He looks like he charges by the minute. He signed in as Cal Hargrove. Cal Hargrove. The name landed like a stone in the quiet room. I knew him. I had never met him, but I knew the name. He was a strip mall lawyer who specialized in injury settlements and estate management. Marla had mentioned him once when she was trying to sue a dry cleaner for ruining a blouse she had owned for 5 years. If she brought a lawyer to the emergency room, she wasn't here to hold my hand. She was here to secure the asset. She was here to make sure that if I died, or if I was incapacitated, The control of my accounts transferred smoothly to her before the body was cold. "Okay," I said, letting go of Jenna's wrist. My hand felt cold. "Go, let them in. And Jenna, stay close, but don't interfere unless I signal." Jenna squeezed my shoulder once, hard, and then slipped out the door. I was alone in the semi-darkness. I closed my eyes, letting my body go limp. I focused on my breathing, in, out, shallow breaths. I had to look like I was drifting on the edge of consciousness. I had to look like a victim. My phone, tucked under the heavy hospital blanket right against my hip, buzzed against my skin. It was a violent vibration, long and demanding. Then another, and another. I didn't need to look to know what the text said, but I needed to keep the anger fresh. I needed to remember why I was doing this, keeping my eyes closed to slits. I slid the phone out just an inch, shielding the screen's glow with the sheet. "Mom, pick up the phone." "Bella, I know you are in there." "Mom, the authorized user link is down. The app says permission revoked. Fix it, now. Mom, do not make me come back there and create a scene. I am standing here like a pauper with a declined card. It is humiliating. Mom, transfer the money, or I will have Mr. Hargrove file for emergency guardianship right now. You are obviously not in your right mind." I stared at the last message. Emergency guardianship. That was the play. She wasn't just trying to get the $4,200 for the flight. She was going for the whole pot. If she could prove I was mentally compromised from the accident, head trauma, she would argue she could get a judge to sign over temporary power of attorney, and temporary would become permanent before I even woke up. I slid the phone back under my hip. I didn't reply. Silence is a vacuum. It pulls people in. It makes them desperate. It makes them careless. I lay there, waiting. Minutes stretched out. I heard the distant chime of the elevator. I heard the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum. The hospital sounds were amplified in the dark. Then I heard them. It was the click-clack of heels. Hard, fast, angry heels. Marla didn't walk. She marched. "I don't care about the policy." Marla's voice cut through the heavy door. Muffled but distinct. "She is my daughter. She is lying in there, probably terrified, and you people are making me sign forms. This is ridiculous." "Ma'am, please keep your voice down," a male voice security rumbled. "This is a trauma ward. We have patients in critical condition. My client is exercising her right to visit immediate family." A smooth, oily voice interjected. That had to be Hargrove. "Under the visitation statutes, unless there is a specific court order barring her, you cannot impede access. We are already documenting this delay. Just put the gown on." "Mom," Tessa's voice whined. "It is yellow. It clashes with everything. Just put it on so we can go in." "I am not wearing a paper bag," Marla hissed. "Fine. Give me the damn mask." Happy. There was a rustling of paper and the snap of elastic. They were right outside the door. I let my head loll to the side, facing away from the door. My mouth slightly open. I slowed my breathing until it was barely a rise and fall of the sheet. I was playing dead, or at least, playing the version of Bella they wanted to see helpless. Pliable. Unconscious. The footsteps stopped right at the threshold. The curtain inside the room, the thin fabric divider that separated the door from the bed, was drawn, blocking their view of me. They were in the room, but not yet at the bed. They were in that small vestibule area where the sink and the gloves were. They thought they were alone. They thought I couldn't hear. "Jesus, it smells like antiseptic, and poor people in here," Marla whispered. The venom in her voice was so pure it almost had a taste. "Look at this place, Ridgeview." I told her to get the premium insurance. If she had listened to me, she would be at St. Luke's right now, and I would be in the VIP waiting lounge instead of wearing this mask. "Mom, is she asleep?" Tessa asked. "The monitor is really quiet." "Who cares if she is asleep?" Hargrove's voice was low, businesslike. "Actually, asleep is better. It makes the biometric capture easier. If she is thrashing around, the Face ID won't register." My heart hammered against my ribs. A painful, frantic thudding. I prayed the monitor volume was low enough that they couldn't hear the spike in my pulse. Biometric capture. They weren't here to ask me to sign. They were here to physically force my face to unlock the phone. They were going to hold the screen up to my unconscious eyes, bypass the security, and transfer the money themselves. It was digital mugging. "Are you sure this is legal?" Tessa asked. She sounded nervous. But not because it was wrong. She sounded nervous about getting caught. "It is Gray," Hargrove replied smoothly. "She is the daughter. She manages the finances. We are just facilitating a transaction that she would have wanted to make if she were awake. We are helping her fulfill her obligations. Besides, once the power of attorney is signed, which we will do as soon as we get the phone unlocked and access the digital notary, it is all retroactive. We just need the phone to approve the notary notification." "She has the phone," Marla said. "I tracked it. It is in the room, probably on the bedside table, or in that bag." "Okay, here's the plan," Hargrove said, the rustling of a briefcase opening. "I have the papers, durable power of attorney and the medical authorization. We need to upload them to her cloud drive and sign them with her thumbprint or face. The bank app needs Face ID. Tessa, you watch the door. If that nurse comes back, you start crying, loudly. Distract her." "I can cry," Tessa said. "I am good at crying." "Marla," Hargrove continued, "you get the phone. It is probably an iPhone. You have to hold it directly parallel to her face, about 6 inches away. You might need to pry her eyelids open if she is really out. Do it quick. Once it unlocks, hand it to me. I will transfer the $4,000 first to cover your flight. Then we move the rest to the holding trust." Pry her eyelids open. The words hung in the air, grotesque and violent. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost gagged. This was not financial grooming anymore. This was predation. They were vultures circling a body that wasn't even dead yet. "I just want to get to Cabo," Marla muttered. "This whole day has been a disaster. $4,000. Do you know how much that ticket is? And she just cuts me off. After everything I did for her, I carried her for 9 months. She owes me this." "She owes you everything, Marla," Hargrove soothed. "We are just collecting the debt. Now, are we ready?" "Ready," Tessa whispered. "Let's get this over with," Marla said. I tensed every muscle in my legs. Preparing. I kept my breathing shallow, my eyes shut. I needed them to commit. I needed them to cross the line from bad thoughts to criminal action. I heard the sharp zip of the curtain rings sliding across the metal track. The barrier was gone. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the smell of a mother. It was Chanel Nummer 5 heavy and floral, masking the scent of the hospital disinfectant. It was the smell of expensive luncheons and department store counters. It was the smell of the money I had earned and she had spent. I didn't open my eyes. Not yet. I felt their presence looming over the bed. I felt the air displace as they crowded in. "She looks terrible," Tessa noted, her voice devoid of sympathy. "Look at that bruise." "Focus, Tessa," Marla snapped. Her voice was right above me now. "Where is the phone? I don't see it on the table." I felt a hand cold. Manicured fingers patting the bed sheets near my shoulder. It was Marla. She was frisking me. She was searching her injured daughter for a device like a pickpocket working a drunk tourist. "It must be under the covers," Marla whispered. "Lift the sheet." "You do it," Tessa said. "I don't want to touch the blood." "Useless," Marla hissed. I felt the sheet being tugged away from my hip. The cool air hit my skin. "Got it," Marla said triumphantly. "Here it is." I felt the weight of the phone being lifted from my side. "Okay," Hargrove directed. "She is facing the wrong way. We need to turn her head, gently, but firm. We need the camera to catch the eyes." "I got it," Marla said. I felt her hands on me. Her left hand grabbed my shoulder, digging into the bruise from the seatbelt. Her right hand, clutching my phone, moved toward my face. She gripped my chin with surprising strength, her nails digging into my jawline. She began to turn my head. She was physically forcing my neck, twisting my broken body to serve her needs. The pain flared in my neck. But the rage was white hot. It was a supernova in my chest. She wasn't checking my temperature. She wasn't brushing hair off my forehead. She was positioning me like a mannequin. "Open your eyes, Bella," Marla whispered, her voice tight with exertion. "Come on, just for a second. Mommy needs you to look at the pretty light." She sounded like she was talking to a dog. I felt the phone screen hover inches from my nose. I could feel the heat radiating from it. "Her eyes are shut tight," Marla complained. "Tessa, help me. Pull her eyelid up." "Oh, Mom," Tessa said, stepping closer. "Fine." I felt Tessa's finger touch my eyebrow. That was it. That was the line. I didn't just open my eyes. I snapped them open. I stared directly into the camera lens of my phone, which Marla was holding 6 inches from my face. The little padlock icon on the screen animated and clicked open. "Unlocked," Marla gasped. A sharp intake of breath. "It unlocked," Hargrove whispered excitedly, not looking at my face, only at the screen. "Give it to me." But Marla wasn't moving. She was frozen, because she was looking past the phone. She was looking into my eyes, and for the first time in her life, she didn't see a daughter. She saw a mirror reflecting her own ugliness back at her. "Get," I rasped, my voice dry and deadly. Marla flinched, pulling the phone back as if it had burned her. "Bella, you're awake." I reached out. It was a movement fueled by pure adrenaline. My hand, the one with the IV line taped to the back, shot out and clamped around Marla's wrist, the wrist holding my phone. I squeezed with everything I had. "I said," I growled, pulling myself up from the pillow, ignoring the screaming agony in my ribs, rising like a corpse from the grave. "Get your hands off me!" The shout echoed in the small room, bouncing off the tiles. Tessa screamed, a short, high-pitched yelp, and dropped the biometric pad she had been holding. It clattered to the floor. Hargrove took a step back, his lawyerly composure cracking instantly. Marla tried to yank her arm away, but I held on. I stared at her, my eyes wide, unblinking, fueled by 100 years of betrayal compressed into a single moment. "You wanted me awake," I hissed, tightening my grip until her expensive bracelets clinked together. "I am awake, Mother. I am wide awake." Marla's face went pale beneath her makeup. She looked from me to the phone, then to Hargrove, her eyes darting with panic. "Bella, honey?" she stammered, her voice trembling. We were just worried. We wanted to make sure you could pay your bills. We are helping you. Helping me." I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You were trying to pry my eyelids open." I looked at the corner of the room, right where the red light of the ceiling camera was blinking steadily. "Jenna," I screamed. "Now." The door flew open, but it wasn't just Jenna, and what happened next was not something Marla Sutton, or her lawyer, or her flying monkey of a daughter, ever saw coming. Because while they were playing checkers with my bank account, I had been playing chess with the entire board. You might think that after being caught trying to pry her injured daughter's eyes open to unlock a banking app, a mother would recoil. You might think she would burst into tears, apologize, or at least have the decency to look ashamed. But you would be thinking of a human mother. You would not be thinking of Marla Sutton. Marla did not scream when I grabbed her wrist. She did not flinch with guilt. She looked at me with the sheer, unadulterated annoyance of a customer whose credit card had just been rejected by a faulty machine. She yanked her arm back with a sharp, violent motion, breaking my weak grip. She smoothed the sleeve of her silk blouse, her eyes cold and calculating, assessing my state. To her, I was not a person waking up from a trauma. I was a glitching device that required a hard reset. "She is delirious," Marla announced flatly to the room. She turned her back on me, dismissing my consciousness as a momentary spasm of the nervous system. "The pain medication is making her confused. She does not know what she is doing. Proceed with the secondary protocol." She extended her hand toward the lawyer. "Give me the phone, and get the hardware ready. We are not leaving here without the authorization." I lay there, my chest heaving, the adrenaline warring with the sedatives in my blood. I watched, paralyzed by a fresh wave of horror, as the scene in front of me shifted from a bedside visit to a coordinated tactical assault. This was not a family dispute. This was a bank heist, and I was the vault. Cal Hargrove, the lawyer, did not even look at me. He placed his briefcase on the rolling table usually reserved for my meals. The sound of the latches clicking open was loud and sharp in the tense room. Snap, snap. He reached inside and pulled out a stack of documents. But they were not paper. They were laminated prompt cards and a tablet computer displaying a complex legal interface. "We have the durable power of attorney queued up," Hargrove said, his voice smooth and detached, like an undertaker discussing coffin linings. "And the medical authorization is attached as a rider. Since the facial recognition failed to stabilize, we will bypass it. We will use the biometric thumbprint verification. It is actually more binding in court. Harder to argue it was accidental." "Just get it done," Marla snapped. "I have been standing in this room for 10 minutes. The lounge closes in an hour." Tessa stepped forward. My sister, the girl I had shared a bunk bed with, she was holding a small black device in her hand. It looked like a credit card terminal, but sleeker, with a glowing blue glass square in the center. It was a portable biometric scanner, the kind used by high-end notaries and secure couriers. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw hesitation in her eyes. But then she looked at Marla, and the hesitation vanished, replaced by the dull, obedient glaze of a soldier following orders. "Just go back to sleep, Bella," Tessa said, her voice trembling slightly but forcing a smirk. "Seriously, stop fighting it. You are just making it harder on yourself. We are going to handle everything. You won't even have to worry about paying the bills when you wake up. Just sleep." "She is not sleeping," Marla interrupted, stepping back to the bedside. "She is stalling. Give me the wipes." Tessa handed her a packet of alcohol swabs from the hospital tray. Marla ripped the packet open. The smell of isopropyl alcohol hit me, stinging my nose. She reached out and grabbed my left hand. Her grip was iron. She didn't hold my hand like a mother holds a child. She held it like a butcher holds a cut of meat she's preparing to stamp. "Keep your hand still," Marla commanded, looking down at my thumb. "You have grease on it. The scanner won't read through grease." She began to scrub my thumb. She rubbed hard, the rough texture of the swab scraping against my skin. She wiped away the dried blood, the dirt from the accident, the evidence of my pain. She wasn't cleaning me to comfort me. She was cleaning the surface of the tool she needed to use. I tried to pull my hand back, but my body felt heavy, like lead. The drugs were pulling me down, making my limbs feel disconnected from my brain. I watched the scene unfold as if I were floating on the ceiling. "Position the pad," Marla ordered. Tessa moved the black device closer, hovering it right over my lap. The blue light from the scanner cast a ghostly glow on her face. Hargrove began to read from the tablet, his voice picking up speed, reciting the legal incantation that would strip me of my life. "By affixing this biometric signature," Hargrove droned, "the principal, Bella Phillips, hereby grants Marla Sutton full and unrestricted access to all checking, savings, and investment accounts. This includes the authority to liquidate assets, open new lines of credit, and manage all real estate holdings." He paused to tap the screen, then continued, his voice barely changing pitch as he delivered the kill shot. "Furthermore, this action authorizes the immediate restoration of the overdraft protection link between the principal's primary account and the beneficiary's checking account. It also initiates the transfer of 80% of current liquid assets into the Marla Sutton Revocable Living Trust for safekeeping and management." The words cut through the fog in my brain like a scalpel. Restore overdraft. Transfer to trust. They weren't just taking the flight money. They weren't just taking the $4,200. They were taking 80%. They were draining me. They were going to empty my savings, my daughter's college fund, my emergency fund, and shove it all into a trust controlled by Marla. They were going to restore the link that allowed her to siphon my paycheck the second it hit my account. "We are just managing the assets," Hargrove said, seemingly addressing the heir, or perhaps the security camera he hoped would validate his narrative. "We are simply ensuring that her mother is not declined. We are preventing financial embarrassment for the family unit. It is a protective measure." "Protective," I rasped. Marla didn't look up. She was focused entirely on my thumb. She had finished cleaning it. She tossed the bloody alcohol wipe onto my chest. "Ready?" Marla said. "Tessa, hold the pad steady. Hargrove, activate the capture sequence." "Sequence active," Hargrove said. "We have a 10-second window. Apply the print now." Marla squeezed my wrist. She began to force my thumb down toward the glowing blue square. "Just relax, Bella," Marla muttered, her breath hitting my cheek. "Don't be difficult. It is for your own good. You can't handle money right now. You are broken. Let Mommy take care of it." My thumb was an inch from the glass. I saw the blue light reflecting in Marla's eyes. It looked like greed. It looked like hunger. I thought of my daughter. I thought of the 80%. I thought of the years I had spent eating instant noodles so Marla could eat steak. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a bone. It was the chain. The invisible chain that had tethered me to her for 30 years shattered into a million pieces. I didn't just pull my hand back. I engaged every muscle fiber I had left. I summoned the strength of every overtime hour I had ever worked, every dollar I had ever saved, every insult I had ever swallowed. I ripped my hand from Marla's grip with a force that sent a shockwave of pain through my broken ribs, blinding and white-hot. But I rode the pain. I used it. I sat bolt upright in the bed, the wires and tubes attached to me pulling taut. "Get your hands off me!" The scream tore from my throat, raw and primal. It wasn't a plea. It was a command. It was the sound of a wild animal cornered in its den. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Marla screamed not in fear, but in shock and indignation, as if the ATM had just reached out and slapped her. She stumbled back, clutching her chest, looking at me with wide, betrayed eyes. Tessa gasped and dropped the biometric pad. It hit the linoleum floor with a sickening crack, the blue light flickering and dying. Hargrove froze. He stood there with his mouth open, the tablet suspended in midair, his legal spiel dying in his throat. He looked at me, and for the first time, the oily veneer of confidence evaporated. He wasn't looking at a principal or an asset anymore. He was looking at a woman who was bleeding, broken, and absolutely furious. I sat there, heaving, my chest rising and falling in jagged gasps. The room was silent except for the frantic alarming of the heart monitor, which was now registering a pulse rate that probably looked like a heart attack. I glared at them. I looked at Marla. I looked at the woman who had birthed me, and I saw her clearly. "You," I wheezed, pointing a shaking finger at her, "you were going to rob me, while I was bleeding." Marla straightened her jacket. She composed herself with terrifying speed. The shock on her face was replaced by a hardening of her features. She didn't apologize. She didn't back down. She looked at the broken device on the floor, then back at me. And then, she said the thing that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The thing that proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I had no mother. "Well," Marla said, her voice dripping with pragmatic ice, "you are awake. That is actually better. A signature from a conscious patient is harder to challenge in probate court than a biometric print." She stepped forward. Kicking the broken scanner aside with the toe of her expensive heel, she reached for the tablet in Hargrove's hand. "Give me the stylus." "Cal," she ordered. She looked me dead in the eye, challenging me. "You are awake, Bella. Good. Now you can sign it properly. Stop the drama. Sign the papers so I can make my flight. Do it fast, before you pass out again." She shoved the tablet toward me. "Sign it," she hissed. "Don't make me tell the family you left your mother stranded." I looked at the tablet. I looked at her. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a monument to narcissism so tall it scraped the sky. She had just been caught trying to steal my life savings, and her reaction was to demand I sign a permission slip for the theft, because it was more legally convenient for her. I started to laugh. It was a wet, painful sound. "You want a signature?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Yes," Marla said, tapping the screen. "Right here, next to the X." "Okay," I said. "I'll give you something, but it won't be a signature." I looked toward the door, where the silence of the hallway was about to be broken by the storm I had summoned. "Grandpa," I whispered, and that was when the air in the room changed completely. Because Marla Sutton had brought a lawyer to a knife fight, but she had forgotten that I was the granddaughter of Walt Phillips, and we didn't bring lawyers. We brought the law. The door to my hospital room did not just open, it was thrown wide with a force that displaced the air, making the curtain rings rattle on their track. Marla froze, the stylus hovering over the tablet screen, her face twisted in a mask of impatient greed. Tessa flinched, shrinking back toward the wall. Even Cal Hargrove, the man in the $3,000 suit who made his living navigating disasters, looked toward the doorway with genuine alarm. Standing there was not a doctor, it was not a nurse, it was a man in a flannel shirt tucked into work trousers, holding a faded baseball cap in one hand and a thick, beige expanding file folder in the other. He looked out of place in the sterile, chrome and white environment of the trauma center. He looked like he should be under the hood of a classic Ford, smelling of motor oil and tobacco, but the look in his eyes was not blue-collar weariness. It was pure, hardened steel. "Grandpa," I breathed, the air leaving my lungs in a rush of relief that was so intense it made my head spin. Walt Phillips did not smile at me. He did not rush to my bedside to coo or cry. He walked into the room with the heavy, deliberate tread of a judge entering a courtroom. Flanking him were two large uniformed security guards and a man in a sharp gray suit with a hospital ID badge that read, Chief of Administration. Marla's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. She lowered the tablet, her eyes darting between her father and the security detail. "Dad," she sputtered, her voice pitching up an octave. "What are you doing here? I am in the middle of handling Bella's affairs. She is incapacitated. She is awake," Grandpa cut her off. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of any warmth. "And you are done." He didn't stop walking until he reached the rolling table where Hargrove had set his briefcase. Grandpa didn't ask for permission. He swept Hargrove's papers aside with his forearm, sending the unsigned power of attorney forms fluttering to the floor like dead leaves, and slammed his own thick folder down on the surface. Thud. The sound was heavy, final. It sounded like a gavel. "Mr. Hargrove, is it?" Grandpa asked, turning his gaze to the lawyer. He looked at the man like he was a piece of gum stuck to his boot. "Yes." Hargrove straightened his tie, trying to regain his professional footing. "I am representing Ms. Sutton in this matter regarding her daughters." "You are representing a trespasser," Grandpa said flatly. He opened the folder. Inside were documents with blue legal covers, stamped and notarized. "This is a durable power of attorney for healthcare and finances, executed 4 months ago. It is signed by Bella Phillips. It is notarized. It is filed with the county clerk, and it names one agent to act on her behalf." He tapped the paper with a thick, calloused finger. Me? The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation system and the steady, now calming, beep of my heart monitor. Marla let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. That is ridiculous. She would never sign that. I am her mother. I am the priority next of kin. That paper must be a forgery." The man in the gray suit, the administrator, stepped forward. He held a clipboard. He looked at Marla with the cold, bureaucratic indifference of an institution that feared liability more than God. "Ms. Sutton," the administrator said, his voice crisp, "we have verified the documents Mr. Phillips provided. They are on file with our legal department and were cross-referenced with Miss Phillips's primary care physician. They are valid. Mr. Phillips is the sole designated decision-maker for the patient in the event she cannot speak for herself. He paused, looking down at me. However, Ms. Phillips appears to be awake and lucid. Ms. Phillips, do you recognize this man? Yes, I rasped, pushing myself up further on the pillows. That is my grandfather, and I want him here. And these people, the administrator gestured to Marla, Tessa, and Hargrove. I want them out, I said. Now. You can't do that, Marla shrieked. She stepped toward the bed, waving the tablet. I have rights. I am her mother. She is confused. She is on drugs. Look at her. She doesn't know what she is saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, I said, my voice gaining strength from the sheer presence of my grandfather. And I know what you were doing. You were trying to force my thumb onto a scanner. The administrator's face darkened. He turned to the security guards. We have a report from the floor nurse regarding an attempt to coerce a biometric signature from a patient under sedation. We also have hallway video footage of unauthorized entry during an infection control protocol. He looked at Hargrove. Counselor, I assume you know that attempted identity theft and financial coercion of a trauma patient is a felony, and that performing such acts on hospital property makes us liable if we do not intervene. Hargrove went pale. The oily confidence was gone, replaced by the sweating panic of a man realizing his license was about to be incinerated. There has been a misunderstanding, Hargrove stammered. Shoving the tablet quickly into his briefcase, he snapped the latches shut. We were acting under the assumption that the patient needed assistance with urgent liabilities. We were not coercing. We were facilitating. But if there is a prior designated agent, then obviously, my client was misinformed. He backed away from Marla as if she were radioactive. Misinformed. Marla spun on him. You said we could do this. You said it was standard procedure. I said we could do it if you had authorization, Hargrove hissed back. You told me she had no other arrangements. You lied to me. Marla? Enough, Grandpa said. He didn't shout. He just said the word, and it carried the weight of a sledgehammer. He looked at Marla. You have no rights here. Marla, not anymore. I have every right, Marla screamed, tears of rage finally starting to well up in her eyes, not for me, but for her loss of control. I gave birth to her. I raised her. You think a piece of paper changes that? You think you can just walk in here and take my daughter from me? I didn't ask for the right, Grandpa said quietly. He looked at me, a flicker of softness in his eyes before he turned the steel back on her. I didn't ask for it. She gave it to me. She came to me. Marla. She came to me 4 months ago and said she was scared. She said you were bleeding her dry. She asked me to be the lock on the door. The memory washed over me. The barbecue. The burnt hot dog. The quiet conversation by the grill. Flashback. I had gone to his house the next day. I sat at his kitchen table, crying, showing him the bank statements. I told him I couldn't say no to her. I told him I was afraid I would never have a life of my own. Grandpa had listened, smoking his cigar. Then he had gone to his safe and pulled out a file. We fix this, he had said. We fix it legal. You sign it over to me. We put a clause the in case of fire clause. Present. The document has a specific trigger clause, Grandpa said, tapping the file again. It says that if there is any suspicious activity on her accounts like, say, a sudden revocation of an authorized user followed by an attempt to access from a new device, my power of attorney becomes absolute. It locks everything down. The bank was notified 10 minutes ago. Her accounts are frozen. The house is flagged. You can't even buy a stick of gum with her name on it. Marla stared at him. The reality of it was sinking in. The one move Grandpa had made wasn't a physical fight. It was a bureaucratic checkmate. He had used the system, the very system she tried to manipulate to build a fortress around me. You've frozen the accounts, Marla whispered. But the flight, the trust. I need to transfer the assets before the market closes, Hargrove said. Hargrove is leaving, the administrator interrupted. And so are you. He nodded to the security guards. The two large men stepped forward. They didn't draw weapons, but their body language made it clear they would happily carry Marla out like a sack of laundry if they had to. "Ms. Sutton, Ms. Phillips, Mr. Hargrove," one guard said, his voice deep and bored. "You are being trespassed from this property. You need to leave. Now." Tessa was already moving. She grabbed her purse and the broken biometric scanner from the floor. "Come on, Mom. Let's go. Seriously. Let's just go." "No." Marla planted her feet. She looked at me, her eyes wild. "Bella, tell them to stop. I am your mother. You can't let them throw me out like a criminal." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had wiped my thumb with alcohol so she could rob me. "You are not a criminal, Mom," I said softly. Marla's face relaxed slightly. Hope flickered. "You are just a bill," I said, "and I canceled the subscription." The color drained from her face completely. It was the first time she really heard me. The guard took her elbow. "Ma'am, let's go." Marla jerked her arm away, but the guard held firm. He began to steer her toward the door. Hargrove was already halfway down the hall, practically running to distance himself from the disaster. Tessa was trailing behind him, head down. Marla was being dragged out. And in that moment, as she crossed the threshold, the mask fell away completely. The worried mother vanished. The business-class traveler vanished. All that was left was the creditor whose loan had just defaulted. She twisted in the guard's grip. Her face contorted into a snarl that looked demonically ugly under the hallway lights. "I will sue you," she screamed, her voice echoing off the tile walls of the trauma unit. "You think you can just walk away? That money is mine. It is rearing fees. I raised you, I fed you, I clothed you. You owe me that money. It is a debt. I will sue you for every cent of back pay for 18 years of raising your ungrateful ass." The words hung in the air, vibrating with a shocking naked honesty. Rearing fees. She had finally said it. She had finally admitted what I had suspected for years. I wasn't a child to her. I was an investment property. And she was angry that she wasn't getting her return on investment. The administrator looked shocked. The nurses in the hallway stopped and stared. Even Grandpa looked disgusted, but I felt a strange, cold calm. "Stop," I said. The word wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough that the guard paused. Holding Marla in the doorway, I looked at her one last time. I wanted to etch this moment into my brain so I would never, ever be weak enough to let her back in. "If it is a loan," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the room, "then show me the contract I signed when I was born. Show me the terms. Show me the interest rate." Marla panted, glaring at me. "And if it is not a loan," I continued, leaning forward, ignoring the pain in my ribs because the fire in my gut was stronger. "If you are claiming it is income, if you are claiming I paid you for a service, then fine, we can call it a transaction." I pointed at the thick folder under Grandpa's hand. "But if it is income, Mom, you have to pay taxes on it. So, which is it? Is it a loan, or is it a gift, or is it taxable income?" I smiled, and it felt like the sharpest blade I had ever wielded. "If you sue me for rearing fees, I will report every cent I ever gave you to the IRS as undeclared income for you. I will hand them the bank statements. I will show them the $500,000 you took tax-free. And you know what they do to people who hide $500,000. Marla went still. The threat of the IRS was the only thing in the world scarier to her than being poor. "Choose," I whispered. "Court or silence." Marla stared at me. Her mouth worked, but no sound came out. She looked at Grandpa, who was standing there like a stone wall. She looked at the administrator. She looked at the guard. She realized, finally, that she was outgunned. She didn't say another word. She jerked her arm, signaling the guard to let go. And then she turned and walked away. Her heels clicked down the hallway. But the rhythm was different this time. It wasn't the march of a queen. It was the scramble of a thief running into the night. The door swung shut. The room was quiet again. Grandpa let out a long breath and took off his baseball cap. He ran a hand through his thinning gray hair. "Rearing fees," he muttered, shaking his head. "I should have never let that woman near a checkbook." He turned to the administrator. "Thank you. Mr. Henderson, I think we are good here. I will file the report." "Mr.?" Henderson said, nodding at me with a look of newfound respect. "Ms. Phillips, I will have security post a permanent detail at your door until discharge. No one gets in without your grandfather's approval." "Thank you," I said. The administrator left. Closing the door softly, I was alone with Grandpa. He pulled up a chair, the one Marla had refused to sit in, and sat down heavily. He rested his elbows on his knees and looked at me. His eyes were crinkled at the corners. "You okay, kid?" he asked. "No," I said, letting my head fall back onto the pillow. "My ribs feel like they are on fire. My head hurts, and I just orphaned myself." "You didn't orphan yourself," Grandpa said, reaching out and patting my hand, the one Marla hadn't touched. His hand was rough and warm. "You just stopped paying the ransom." I closed my eyes. She really said it. Rearing fees. "She said it," Grandpa agreed. "And now we have witnesses. If she ever tries to claim that money was a gift from her to you, or that she was managing it for your benefit, we have 3 people who heard her scream that it was a debt collection. She cooked her own goose." I looked at the folder on the table. "Did you really freeze everything?" "Locked tighter than a drum," Grandpa said. "Checking, savings, credit cards. I even put a flag on your social security number. She can't open a library card in your name right now." "What about the 4,000? I asked. "Did she get it?" Grandpa chuckled. A dry, rasping sound. "Nope. The bank called me the second the biometric failure happened. I told them to reject all pending transfers. She is stuck at the airport with a maxed-out card and a lawyer who is probably going to bill her for the parking." I let out a breath that turned into a laugh, and then into a sob. "Grandpa." "Yeah, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said, his face turning serious again. "This was just the opening battle. Marla isn't going to stop. She's going to get desperate. And desperate people do stupid, dangerous things. We need to do an audit. We need to see exactly how deep her claws are." He tapped the folder. "I brought your laptop," he said. "And I brought coffee. It is going to be a long night." I looked at him, confused. "Here. Now I just got out of a coma practically." "Best time to work," Grandpa said, opening the folder to reveal a stack of fresh paper and a pen. "While the anger is still fresh, pain is a great motivator. Bella, use it." He was right. I could feel the pain in my body, but the pain in my heart, the betrayal. The grief was starting to harden into something useful. It was turning into evidence. "Okay," I said. "Open the laptop. Let's see what she bought." Grandpa smiled. It was a grim smile, but it was the first time I had felt safe in 30 years. "That's my girl," he said. "Let's do some accounting." The drive home from the hospital was a blur of streetlights and painkillers, but walking through my front door felt like stepping onto a different planet. The air inside my small rental house smelled of lavender and oatmeal. A stark contrast to the antiseptic sting of the trauma unit. My daughter was waiting in the living room. When she saw me, she dropped her toy dinosaur and ran. "Mommy?" I dropped to my knees. Ignoring the screaming protest of my fractured ribs, I caught her. I buried my face in her soft hair, smelling the baby shampoo, and I held her tighter than I ever had in my life. I didn't tell her about the hospital fights. I didn't tell her that her grandmother had tried to rob us an hour ago. I just whispered, "I am here. Mommy is right here." She was safe. That was the only balance sheet that mattered. But once the babysitter was paid, and my daughter was tucked into bed, the real work began. I walked into the kitchen. Grandpa Walt had already set up his command post on my dining table. It wasn't a warm family gathering. It looked like a war room. My laptop was open, casting a blue glow on the tablecloth. Next to it was a pot of black coffee and a legal pad. Grandpa didn't look up when I entered. He was scrolling through a spreadsheet, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Sit down," he said, his voice gravelly, "and drink this. You are going to need the caffeine to stomach what we are about to see." I sat. I took the mug. My hands were still shaking slightly, but not from fear anymore. It was from a cold, creeping dread. "I thought I knew the damage," I said, looking at the screen. "It is the $4,200 a month, right? The allowance." Grandpa hit a key and spun the laptop around to face me. "Bella," he said softly, "the $4,200. That was just the cover charge. That was what she took to keep you quiet. What she took behind your back, that is a whole different category." He pointed to the screen. It was my transaction history for the last 12 months, exported into a master list. He had highlighted rows in yellow. The screen looked like a field of dandelions. There was so much yellow. "Look at the small charges," Grandpa instructed. "Forget the big transfers for a second. Look at the drip feed." I leaned in. Uber rides $24, $30, $15, Starbucks $8, $12, $10, Salon $54, $85, Prime Video $19, Spotify. Family plan? $16. I frowned. "I don't use Spotify. I use Apple Music." "She does," Grandpa said. "And look here. Gym membership, $50 a month." "Marla doesn't go to the gym," I said. "No," Grandpa tapped the screen, "but Tessa does. You have been paying for Tessa's Pilates membership for 3 years." I felt the blood drain from my face. I scrolled down. It went on and on. It wasn't just emergencies. It wasn't, "I need help with the electric bill." It was a lifestyle subsidy. Every time Marla bought a coffee, she used my card. Every time she took an Uber to a brunch I wasn't invited to. I paid for the ride. I saw a charge for Skyline Lounge for $200 on a Tuesday night. I was working late that Tuesday. I remembered eating a cold sandwich at my desk. Marla had been drinking cocktails on a rooftop, on my dime. "It is death by 1,000 cuts," I whispered. I didn't notice because they were small. $20 here, $50 there. "Add it up," Grandpa said. "I did the math for the last year alone, just the small stuff. The stuff under $100. He pushed a piece of paper across the table. On it, he had written a number in thick black marker. $12,450. I stared at the number. That was a used car. That was 6 months of rent. That was my daughter's future college tuition. "She stole $12,000 in coffee and taxis," I asked, my voice trembling. "She felt entitled to it," Grandpa said. "But that is not the worst part. Click the next tab." I clicked. This was a credit report summary. Grandpa had pulled my full file from the 3 major bureaus Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. My credit score, which I had worked so hard to build, was sitting at 620. "That can't be right," I said. "I pay my bills on time. I have never missed a payment. It should be 750. "Scroll down to Open Accounts," Grandpa said. I scrolled. My eyes scanned the list. Student loans paid off, car lease active, primary visa active, and then, there it was. Sapphire Reserve credit card. Status open/delinquent. Balance, $14,300. Opened November. 2 years ago. I stopped breathing. I don't have a Sapphire Reserve card. I never applied for one. "Look at the address on the file," Grandpa said. I clicked the details. Billing address, 442 Oakwood Drive. Marla's house. "She opened a credit card in my name," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "She committed identity theft. She opened it, had the card sent to her house, and maxed it out. And she has been paying just the minimums," Grandpa explained. "Just enough to keep the collections agents from calling you. She treated it like a secret slush fund. But last month, she missed a payment. That is why your score dropped." I felt sick, physically sick. The betrayal was so layered, so complex. It wasn't an impulse, it was an architecture. She had built a financial structure where I was the load-bearing wall, and she was the termite eating the wood from the inside. "There is more," Grandpa said. He sounded tired now. "Check the inquiries section." I looked. A hard inquiry is when a lender checks your credit to approve a new loan. There was a hard inquiry dated 3 days ago. Lender Quick Cash Personal Loans. Amount requested: $25,000. Status: pending verification. "She tried to take out a personal loan," I whispered. 3 days ago, before the accident." "She knew the walls were closing in," Grandpa said. "She probably maxed out the secret card and needed cash to pay the minimums. She was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you are both Peter and Paul." I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't look at it anymore. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. "How?" I asked the glass. "How did she do this? I understand the card I gave her. But the new accounts, the loans." "Think, Bella," Grandpa said from the table. "Think back. Did she ever ask you for documents? Maybe said she wanted to keep them safe." The memory hit me like a slap. 5 years ago, I was moving apartments. It was chaotic. Marla had come over to help. She had found my filing cabinet. "Bella, you are so disorganized," she had said, clucking her tongue. "You are going to lose your birth certificate and your social security card in this move. Why don't I take the important folder to my house? I have that fireproof safe in the study. I will keep it safe for you until you settle in." I had thanked her. I had actually thanked her. "She has my social security card," I said, turning back to Grandpa. "She has my birth certificate. She has my passport copy. She has everything." "She didn't offer to keep them safe," Grandpa said grimly. "She was stocking her toolbox. She has been sitting on a kit to be you for 5 years. I sank back into the chair. "And Tessa?" "You mentioned Tessa's gym membership. Tessa is not innocent," Grandpa said. "Open the laptop again. I know you don't want to, but you have to see this." I opened it. Grandpa navigated to a different section of the bank statement. He searched for a keyword, Klarna, and Affirm, and Afterpay. There were dozens of them. Affirm payment, $55. Klarna payment, $42. "These are buy now, pay later plans," Grandpa said. "You link a bank account, and they take the money in installments. Look at the merchant descriptions: Sephora, Nordstrom, Gucci outlet." "Tessa," I said. "These are Tessa's brands. I buy my clothes at Target." "Tessa set up these accounts," Grandpa theorized. "She likely used her own email, but she put your bank account as the funding source, or maybe Marla did it for her. Don't worry, honey. Just put it on Bella's account. She won't notice $50. "She made me a guarantor for her handbags," I said. "My sister is walking around with a $2,000 purse that I'm paying for in $50 installments. While I'm eating leftovers." I put my head in my hands. The grief was gone. The shock was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. It was the clarity of a surgeon looking at a gangrenous limb. You don't try to save the limb anymore. You cut it off to save the body. "What do we do?" I asked. "Grandpa, how do I stop this? It is everywhere. It is like a cancer." Grandpa pulled a fresh sheet of paper from his legal pad. He uncapped a pen. "We operate," he said. "Step 1. We freeze the blood supply." He began to write, his handwriting jagged but firm. "We are going to lock your credit reports right now. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. We put a fraud alert on all of them. That stops the $25,000 loan immediately." "Okay," I said. "I can do that online." "Step 2, Grandpa continued. "We change the locks. Marla has your passwords. She has your security questions. You know how I know? Because your mother's maiden name is Phillips. That is me. She knows the answer to, 'What is your mother's maiden name?'" I laughed. A humorless sound. "God, you are right. She is the answer to the security question." "We change everything," Grandpa said. "New passwords, randomly generated, and we switch your 2-factor authentication. No more texts to your phone number. She might try to SIM swap you. That is where she tricks the phone company into transferring your number to her phone so she gets your verification codes. We switched to an authenticator app on your phone only. Step 3. Grandpa wrote the number 3 and circled it. We demand the logs. The logs. We send a formal request to the bank, Grandpa said. We want the IP address history for every login for the last 2 years. We want to prove that the logins came from her house, from her devices. We are building a forensic trail. For court, I said. Grandpa looked at me. Yes, for court, Bella. You have to decide right now. Are we having a family squabble? Or are we reporting a crime because you can't do both? If you want to get your money back, if you want to clear your credit score, you have to file a police report for identity theft. You have to name Marla Sutton as the perpetrator. I looked at the hallway where my daughter was sleeping. I thought about the credit card debt I hadn't created. I thought about the rearing fees. If I didn't stop this, they would eat me alive. And when they were done with me, they would start on my daughter. It is not a family squabble, I said. It is a crime. Good, Grandpa said. Then we stop crying. We start documenting. For the next 3 hours, we worked in silence. The only sounds were the clicking of keys and the scratching of Grandpa's pen. We disputed charges. We froze accounts. We wrote draft emails to the fraud departments of 3 different banks. I felt like I was watching my old life burn down. But for the first time, I was holding the match. At 1 a.m, the silence was broken by the sound of mail being pushed through the slot in the front door. I frowned. Mail at 1 a.m. No, Grandpa said, standing up instantly. That wasn't the postman. That was a drop-off. I went to the door. Lying on the mat was a thick red envelope, no postage, hand-delivered. I picked it up. It was addressed to Bella Phillips. Urgent. I opened it. It wasn't a letter from Marla. It was a notice from a collection agency. Final notice of default. Regarding Emerald City Jewelry, amount due. $5,800. Guarantor Bella Phillips. I stared at it. Jewelry? I don't wear jewelry. Tessa does, Grandpa said from behind me. She must have bought that diamond tennis bracelet she was wearing at Christmas, and she missed the payments. I crushed the letter in my hand. Then, my pocket buzzed. My phone? I pulled it out. It was an email notification from my primary savings bank, the one account I thought was safe, the one with my life insurance policy attached to it. Subject security alert. Beneficiary change request. Details. A request has been made to change the primary beneficiary on your account from daughter's name to Marla J. Sutton. Verification required. I felt the blood in my veins turn to absolute ice. She wasn't just trying to steal my cash. She was trying to steal my death. If I died from my injuries, she wanted to make sure the insurance money went to her, not my daughter. I showed the phone to Grandpa. He read it. His jaw tightened until I thought his teeth would crack. She is not stopping, Grandpa said, his voice low and dangerous. She is escalating. She thinks if she moves fast enough, she can grab the assets before the freeze kicks in. She tried to cut my daughter out, I whispered. She tried to steal from my child. I looked at Grandpa. I am done playing defense. Good, Grandpa said, because tomorrow morning, we go on offense. We aren't just filing a report. Bella, we are going to the district attorney. I looked at the red envelope in one hand and the phone in the other. The audit was over. The war had officially begun. The morning sun hit the glass facade of Brightcrest Health Solutions with a glare that felt like a migraine waiting to happen. I walked into the lobby wearing a blazer that was 2 sizes too big to accommodate the compression wrappings around my ribs. Every breath was a negotiation with pain, but the physical agony was nothing compared to the dread churning in my stomach. I thought the hospital was the battlefield. I was wrong. The hospital was just the opening skirmish. Marla Sutton did not believe in ceasefires. She believed in scorched earth. I had barely sat down at my desk and turned on my monitor when the internal chat pinged. It was not my manager. It was Sarah from Human Resources. Please come to my office. Immediately. The period at the end of the sentence terrified me more than the request itself. I walked the long gray carpet to the HR suite. My mind raced. Had I missed a deadline? Had the quality of my reports dropped? No. I was a model employee. I was the person who stayed until 7 in the evening to fix other people's spreadsheets. When I entered Sarah's office, she did not smile. She gestured to the chair opposite her desk. She looked uncomfortable, shifting papers around as if looking for a way to say something terrible. "Bella," she started, her voice soft but professional. "We received a disturbing phone call this morning, about 45 minutes ago. I knew, instantly, I knew. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving my skin cold. It was a woman claiming to be your mother," Sarah continued, watching my reaction closely. "She identified herself as Marla Sutton. She asked to speak to the plan administrator for your health benefits and your payroll coordinator." "What did she want?" I asked. My voice was steady, which surprised me. "She claimed that you were involved in a severe car accident yesterday," Sarah said, glancing at a notepad, "which we can see is true, given your condition, but she went further. She stated that the head trauma has left you mentally unstable. She used the phrase, psychotic break. She told us that you are currently a danger to yourself and your finances, and she requested immediate access to your direct deposit settings and your disability insurance portal to manage your affairs while you are incapacitated." The room spun. It was not enough to steal my money. She had to steal my credibility. She was willing to burn my career, my only source of independent income, just to get her hands on the levers of control. If my employer thought I was unstable, I could lose my security clearance. I could lose my job. She also threatened legal action if we did not comply, Sarah added. She said she is your legal guardian. I took a deep breath. The pain in my ribs flared, sharp and grounding. It reminded me that I was not crazy. I was just hunted. "Sarah," I said, "I need you to look at something." I reached into my bag. I did not pull out a tissue to cry. I pulled out the black folder Grandpa Walt and I had assembled until 2 in the morning. I slid it across the desk. "This is an incident report from Ridgeview Trauma Center, dated yesterday evening," I said, pointing to the top document. "It details an attempt by Marla Sutton to physically coerce a biometric signature from me while I was under sedation. It includes a statement from the chief of administration at the hospital, barring her from the premises." Sarah's eyes widened. She picked up the paper. "This," I pointed to the next page, "is a time-stamped log from my bank showing unauthorized login attempts from her IP address. And this is a transcript of the text messages she sent me while I was on the stretcher, demanding money." I looked Sarah in the eye. "My mother is not trying to help me. She is currently the subject of a fraud investigation which I am filing with the police today. She is trying to access my payroll because I cut off her access to my credit cards last night." Sarah read the documents. She read the hospital report twice. The silence in the room stretched out, heavy and tense. Then, Sarah looked up. The suspicion was gone. In its place was a look of horrified sympathy. "She tried to force a fingerprint," Sarah whispered. "She tried to force an eyelid scan." I corrected. While I had broken ribs, Sarah closed the folder. She picked up her phone and dialed an extension. "Security. This is Sarah in HR. I need to update the access protocols for Bella Phillips. Immediately. Yes. We have a hostile external party. No calls are to be put through. No visitors, and flag her personnel file as lockdown status. Only the VP and myself can access it." She hung up and looked at me. "Bella, we are putting you in protective mode. We will change your internal extension. If she calls the main line, she will be routed to our legal department, not you. And I strongly suggest you file a restraining order. If she shows up in the lobby, we will have her arrested for trespassing." "Thank you," I said. I felt like I might collapse. I didn't want you to think I was crazy." "You are not crazy," Sarah said firmly. "You are under siege. Go back to your desk. We have your back." I walked back to my cubicle feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and victory. Marla had fired a missile at my livelihood, but she had forgotten that in the corporate world, documentation is king. She had relied on her ability to manipulate emotions. I had relied on paper trails. I sat down and stared at my screen. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tessa. My thumb hovered over the screen. I almost didn't open it, but Grandpa had said we needed evidence. Every text was a brick in the wall we were building. Tessa. Hey sis. Look, I know yesterday was messy. Mom is being super intense and I know you are mad, but honestly, she is just stressed about the bills. We all are. Tessa. Anyway, I have a huge favor. The payment for my Emerald City bracelet is due today. It is only $200 for this installment. If I miss it, they hit my credit score. Can you just sign the guarantor renewal? I promise I will pay you back next week when I get my commission check. Please, I will handle Mom for you. I stared at the message. I will pay you back. How many times had I heard that 100, 1,000, and I will handle Mom for you, as if Marla was an unruly pet that Tessa could control, rather than the ringmaster of this circus. Tessa didn't get it. She didn't understand that the world had changed overnight. She thought this was just another fight, another cycle where I would get angry. They would guilt me, and I would eventually pay to make the noise stop. She was offering me peace in exchange for $200. She was trying to bribe me with my own sanity. I typed my reply. I didn't use emojis. I didn't use soft language. Me. Do not text me again. Forward all inquiries regarding debts to my lawyer. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I braced myself. If this was Marla screaming from a burner phone, I was ready to record it. This is Bella, I answered. Ms. Phillips, this is Cal Hargrove, the lawyer, the man in the suit who had tried to facilitate the robbery in the hospital room. Mr. Hargrove, I said, my voice dropping to a chill. I believe I trespassed you from my life yesterday. If you are calling on behalf of your client, you can speak to the police officer I am meeting with at 5 o'clock. No, please. Hargrove sounded breathless. He sounded like a man who was looking over his shoulder. I am not calling on her behalf. I am calling to inform you that I have formally withdrawn my representation of Ms. Sutton as of this morning. I paused. Is that so? Ms. Phillips, you have to understand. Hargrove spoke quickly. I was assured by your mother that there was a pre-existing verbal contract regarding the management of your assets. She told me you had specifically requested the legal structure we were trying to implement. She claimed you were nonverbal due to the accident, but had given instructions prior to the crash. And you believed her without checking, I asked. I was negligent in my due diligence, he admitted. The shame in his voice was palpable, but after the incident with the biometric scanner, and seeing the valid power of attorney your grandfather produced, I realized I had been misled. I cannot be party to fraud. Ms. Phillips, I have a license to protect. You were party to fraud. Mr. Hargrove, I said. You were holding the tablet. I know, he said. And that is why I am calling. I want to offer my cooperation. If you are filing a complaint, I would appreciate it if you would mention that I withdrew voluntarily and ceased all action the moment the deception was revealed. A plot twist. The rat was jumping off the sinking ship and trying to swim to my lifeboat. I thought about Grandpa's advice. Use the system. Mr. Hargrove, I said, I am willing to leave your name out of the primary fraud complaint, on one condition. Anything, he said. I want a written affidavit from you, I said. I want a sworn statement detailing exactly what Marla told you before you arrived at the hospital. I want you to document her lies. I want you to confirm that she instructed you to bypass the biometric security, and I want it emailed to me within the hour. There was a silence on the other end. He knew that by doing this, he was essentially burying his former client. He was handing me the nail for Marla's coffin. Okay, Hargrove said finally. You will have it. He hung up. I sat back in my chair. My ribs ached, but the pain felt distant. I had just turned their own weapon against them. Marla's expensive lawyer was now my star witness. I left work early. HR insisted. They walked me to my car with a security escort. Just in case Marla was lurking in the parking lot. She wasn't. She was probably too busy trying to find a new lawyer who would take a check that was guaranteed to bounce. I drove straight to Grandpa's house. The kitchen table was still covered in paper. But the chaos was becoming order. Grandpa had spent the day organizing the audit. He had 3 stacks of paper. "This is the gift pile," Grandpa said, pointing to a very small stack. "Birthday presents, Christmas dinners. We can't touch these. The law says a gift is a gift." "Okay," I said. "This is the coercion pile." He pointed to a larger stack. "The rent payments she guilted you into. The car repairs where she cried until you paid. These are moral crimes, Bella, but legal gray areas. We might not get this money back, but we can use it to show a pattern of abuse." "And the third pile?" I asked. The third pile was massive. It was a mountain of paper. "This," Grandpa said, slapping his hand on top of it. "This is the fraud pile. The credit cards opened in your name. The loans applied for without your consent. The identity theft. The buy now, pay later schemes." He looked at me. "This pile totals over $40,000 in the last 2 years alone. This is not a gray area. This is a felony. This is prison time." I looked at the mountain. It represented hours of my life. It represented vacations I never took, clothes I never bought, peace of mind I never had. "We submit it," I said. "We submit all of it." "It means arresting your mother." "Bella," Grandpa said softly, "I need you to be sure. Once we hand this to the district attorney, you can't undo it. You can't call the cops and say, 'Never mind,' just because she cries." "She didn't cry when I was bleeding," I said. "She just asked for my thumb." Grandpa nodded. "All right then." My phone buzzed again. It was Marla. I had blocked her number, but she had found a way. She was emailing me now. The subject line was in all caps. Subject, "The truth comes out." I opened it. Grandpa leaned in to read over my shoulder. "Bella, I see what you're doing. You are trying to ruin me. After everything I sacrificed for you. Well, 2 can play this game. If you do not unlock the accounts and authorize the transfer by midnight, I am going to tell everyone. I will tell your Aunt Sarah, your cousins, and the whole family that you abandoned your invalid mother. I will tell them you left me with no money for food while you sat on a pile of cash. I will tell them you are abusive. I will post it on Facebook. I will destroy your reputation. Do you really want the world to know you are a daughter who throws her mother to the wolves?" I read the words. They were meant to be a nuclear bomb. They were designed to trigger the shame that had controlled me since I was 6 years old. Don't let people think you are bad. Don't let people think you are ungrateful. But as I read them, I didn't feel shame. I felt a strange, bubbling sensation in my chest. I started to laugh. It wasn't a hysterical laugh. It was a genuine, amused chuckle. "What?" Grandpa asked, looking at me with concern. "What is funny about that?" I looked at him, wiping a tear from my eye. "She says she is going to tell everyone I abandoned her," I said. I looked at the piles of evidence. I looked at the affidavit Hargrove had just sent to my inbox. I looked at the peace in my daughter's eyes when I tucked her in. "She is half right," I told Grandpa. "I am abandoning her. I am abandoning the role she wrote for me. I am abandoning the guilt. I am abandoning the debt." I hit reply. I didn't write a paragraph. I didn't defend myself. I typed 7 words. Go ahead. "And tell them about the thumb." I hit send. "Let's finish the paperwork." "Grandpa," I said, "I want this on the prosecutor's desk by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." The threat of public shame had been her last weapon, and like a gun with no bullets, it just clicked harmlessly against the armor I had finally built. She could scream to the world that I was a bad daughter. The world could think what it wanted. I had the receipts, and for the first time in my life, the truth was not something I had to hide. It was something I was going to use to bury her. I did not reply to Marla's threat immediately. I let it sit in the inbox, radioactive and glowing. for exactly 45 minutes. In the game of chess, you do not move when you are angry. You move when your opponent has left their king exposed. Marla had made a fatal error. She had confused a family argument with a legal proceeding. In a family argument, claiming "I raised you, so you owe me" is a powerful emotional guilt trip. It shuts people up. It makes daughters cry and write checks. But in the eyes of the Internal Revenue Service, that sentence means something entirely different. If she had said, "Bella, I am your mother and you should help me out of love," the money I gave her would be classified as a gift. In the United States, you can give someone a lot of money as a gift without them having to pay taxes on it. It is just money moving between family members. But Marla didn't say that. She said it was a fee. She called it rearing fees. She called it a debt collection. And if it is a fee, then it is income. And if it is income, it is taxable. I sat at the kitchen table, the pain in my ribs throbbing like a metronome, and I picked up my phone. I needed her to say it one more time. I needed it in writing, time-stamped, and unambiguous. I typed a single text message. I kept it devoid of emotion. I stripped away the daughter and became the auditor. Me, Mom. I am looking at the transfers. I just want to be clear before I make any decisions. You are saying that the money I have sent you over the years, and the money you are demanding now, is payment for the work of raising me? It is a fee for services rendered. I hit send. Grandpa Walt watched me from across the table. He didn't ask what I was doing. He just sipped his coffee and waited. The phone buzzed 3 minutes later. Marla couldn't resist. She thought I was wavering. She thought I was looking for a logical reason to capitulate. And she was happy to provide one. Mom. Exactly. Finally you get it. I put in the work. I paid for your food. I paid for your clothes. Now I am collecting my return. I raised you. You pay me. That is how it works. Don't act like it is charity. It is what you owe me. I stared at the screen. I raised you. You pay me. It was the ugliest sentence I had ever read. It reduced 18 years of my life to a transaction. But it was also the most beautiful sentence I had ever read, because it was a confession. I took a screenshot. Click. Got her, I whispered. I turned the laptop toward Grandpa. She just admitted, in writing, that the $300,000 I have transferred to her over the last decade was not a gift. It was compensation for services, which means she has earned $300,000 of unreported income. Grandpa's eyebrows shot up. She never declared a cent of that. She files as having zero income so she can get state benefits. Exactly, I said. She is double-dipping. She is taking my money as salary, but telling the government she is destitute to get subsidized health insurance and housing assistance. I opened a new browser tab. I didn't go to Facebook. I didn't go to Instagram. I went to the official whistleblower portal for the tax authority. It is a dry, boring website. It asks for specific details. It does not care about your feelings. It cares about numbers. I began to fill out the form. Nature of violation, unreported income. False claims for government benefits. Subject, Marla J. Sutton. Evidence bank statements dating back 8 years. Sworn affidavit from payer me classifying payments as transactional compensation per payee's admission. Digital correspondence confirming payee's characterization of funds as fees and payment. I attached the spreadsheet Grandpa and I had built. I attached the screenshot of the text message. Then, I found something else. As I was categorizing the transfers for the report, I noticed a recurring label in the banknotes. About 20% of the transfers from my account to hers, the ones she had initiated herself using the authorized access, were tagged with specific memos. Memo medical support, copay, memo prescription reimbursement, memo physical therapy, urgent. They looked legitimate. If an auditor looked at them quickly, they would see a daughter helping a sick mother with medical bills. Those kinds of payments are often non-taxable exclusions, but Grandpa had the credit card statements from the fraud pile open on his side of the table. Grandpa, I said, pointing to a transfer dated June 12th of last year. She took $1,500 from me. The memo says, emergency dental surgery. Grandpa ran his finger down the credit card statement for June. June 12th, he muttered. Here it is, $1,500. But it wasn't a dentist. Bella. He turned the paper so I could see. Merchant Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. Deposit. My stomach turned over. She hadn't just stolen the money, she had laundered it. She had labeled it as a medical necessity to keep me from asking questions if I ever checked, and to make it look like a humanitarian gift to the government. That is wire fraud, Grandpa said, his voice flat. Using electronic communications to create a false pretense for obtaining money, and since she used the medical tag to avoid tax scrutiny, it is tax fraud too. I added a new section to my report. Additional violation, misclassification of funds. Funds labeled as medical support were immediately diverted to luxury travel and retail vendors. See attached cross-reference of bank withdrawals versus credit card expenditures. I reviewed the form. It was a torpedo. It was a comprehensive, documented dismantling of her entire financial existence. Once I hit submit, an investigation would start. They would audit her back to the Stone Age. They would find the hidden accounts. They would find the benefits fraud. I hovered the mouse over the submit button. Do it, Grandpa said. She made her choice when she typed that text. I clicked, submission received, reference number 8944-B. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 6 years old. It is done, I said. The system has it now, Grandpa nodded. Now we wait. The government moves slow, but it eats everything in its path. But the silence didn't last long. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up. It wasn't Marla. It was Tessa. I had blocked her number, but she was calling from a landline, probably the house phone she hadn't used in 10 years. I answered. Hello? Bella? Tessa's voice was high, frantic, bordering on hysterical. Bella, oh my God, Mom is freaking out. She says you are going to jail her. She says you are reporting her to the IRS. Is that true? It is true, I said calmly. I filed the report 10 minutes ago. Are you insane? Tessa shrieked. Do you know what that means? If they freeze her assets, how is she going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to pay for my car insurance? My name is on the policy attached to her account. That sounds like a Tessa problem, I said. Not a Bella problem. You can't do this. Tessa was crying now, the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who realizes the free ride has hit a brick wall. She is our mother. You are ruining the family. Tessa, I cut her off. Stop screaming and listen to me. I know about the accounts. The line went dead silent. The crying stopped instantly. What? What accounts? Tessa stammered. The Affirm account. I listed them off, ticking them on my fingers. The Klarna account, the Emerald City Jewelry account, the ones you opened with your email, but my bank routing number, the ones where you forged my digital signature as a guarantor. I didn't. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice dropping to that cold, surgical tone again. I have the IP logs. I know it was you, and I know the total is over $14,000. It was Mom's idea, Tessa blurted out. The confession came so fast it was almost pathetic. She threw Marla under the bus before the bus had even started its engine. Mom told me to do it. Tessa rushed on, the words tumbling out. She said you wouldn't notice. She said, your sister is nice. She has money. She won't miss $50 a month. She showed me how to link it as a recurring autopay so it wouldn't trigger a notification. She said it was fine because we are family. Your sister is nice. She has money. I closed my eyes. That was my epitaph in this family. Nice, rich, Target. Tessa, I said, I am going to give you one chance. Just one. Anything. Tessa wept. Please, Bella, I can't go to jail. I have a job interview next week. If I have a record, my life is over. I am not asking you to go to jail, I said. I am asking you to tell the truth to the people who matter. Who? The police, I said. And the fraud investigators. When they come, and they are coming, you are going to tell them exactly what you just told me. You are going to tell them Marla instructed you to do it. You are going to tell them she set up the structure. You are going to testify that she was the architect. But that is betraying Mom, Tessa whispered. She betrayed you. Tessa, I said. She taught you how to commit a felony against your own sister. That is not parenting. That is recruiting an accomplice, if you cooperate. I will tell the district attorney that I do not wish to press charges against you specifically. I will say you were coerced. I will let you pay me back the $14,000 over 5 years. Interest-free, no jail, no record. I paused. But if you lie for her, if you try to protect her, then you go down with the ship, and I will make sure you are in the cell right next to her. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear Tessa breathing. I could hear the gears turning in her head, the survival instinct warring with the conditioning. Okay, Tessa whispered. Okay, I will do it. I will tell them. Good, I said. Keep your phone on, and don't tell Marla we spoke. I hung up. I looked at Grandpa. He had stopped writing. He was looking at me with a mixture of pride and sorrow. You handled that, he said. She is my sister, I said, looking at the phone. But she is also a thief. I gave her a life raft. If she punches a hole in it, that is on her. Now, Grandpa said, closing the thick folder. We have stopped the bleeding. We have launched the counterattack. Now we need to build the wall so high they can never climb over it again. He pulled out a new, crisp document. This is the new structure, he said. Tomorrow morning, we are opening a new trust in your name, the Bella Phillips Irrevocable Trust. We are moving every asset you have into it, your house, your car, your savings, your retirement. Why a trust? I asked. Because a trust is not you. Grandpa explained. It is a legal entity. If Marla tries to sue you for rearing fees or elder support, or whatever nonsense she dreams up next, she can't touch the money. It belongs to the trust, and the trust has strict bylaws. He pointed to a clause at the bottom. Beneficiary's daughter's name, Trustee Walt Phillips. Successor trustee, Independent Bank fiduciary. Prohibited parties, Marla J. Sutton, Tessa Sutton. We are adding a poison pill clause, Grandpa said. It states that if any funds from this trust are ever distributed to Marla or Tessa, the trust is immediately dissolved and the assets are donated to charity. It makes it legally impossible for a judge to order you to pay them from these funds. Zero trust, I said. Literally. Zero trust, Grandpa agreed. And we are setting up a firewall on your personal data. We are hiring a service to scrub your info from the internet. No more white pages listings. No more public address data. You are going to become a ghost to them. I nodded. It felt extreme. It felt like witness protection. But then I remembered the biometric scanner. I remembered the medical support crews. Extreme was the only language Marla understood. Do it, I said. We finished the paperwork in silence. The clock on the microwave read 3 a.m. I was exhausted, my body aching, my eyes burning, but I felt clean. Then, my phone rang again. I frowned. It wasn't Marla. It wasn't Tessa. It was a number I didn't recognize, with a Washington, D.C. area code. Who calls at 3 a... I whispered. Answer it, Grandpa said, his eyes narrowing. I picked up. Hello? Ms. Phillips. The voice was male, deep, and sounded like it was used to giving orders. This is Agent Miller from the Inspector General's Office for the Social Security Administration. I apologize for the late hour, but we received a flag on a file linked to your Social Security number about 20 minutes ago. My heart hammered. The tax report, I just filed it. We saw the report, Agent Miller said. That is what triggered our system. But Ms. Phillips, I am calling because we need to verify some transaction limits with you immediately. We are looking at the history you submitted. Okay, I said, looking at Grandpa. I submitted everything I had. We are seeing the transfers to Marla Sutton, Agent Miller said. but we are also seeing a series of secondary transfers moving from her account to an offshore entity in the Cayman Islands. These transfers were made in your name, using your identity as the primary investor. I froze. What? I don't have offshore accounts. I have a savings account in Ohio. We know, Agent Miller said, but someone has been using your identity to move a lot more than just rearing fees. Ms. Phillips, the amounts we are tracking are not in the thousands. They are in the six figures, and they are tied to a shell company that has been flagged for money laundering. I gripped the edge of the table. The room seemed to tilt. Money laundering, I whispered. We need you to come in, Agent Miller said. Not to the local police, to the federal field office, tomorrow morning. This is not just about a credit card anymore. Ms. Phillips, your mother has been using your name to wash money for someone else, and we need to know who. I looked at Grandpa. His face had gone white. The amount is bigger than you think, Agent Miller said, his voice grave. Much bigger. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Grandpa, I said, my voice barely a squeak. It wasn't just the lifestyle. It wasn't just the cruises. What? Grandpa asked, standing up. She wasn't just stealing from me, I said, staring at the wall. She was using me as a mule. She has been laundering money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Grandpa looked at the fraud pile on the table. It suddenly looked very small. We thought we were fighting a greedy mother. We had just stumbled into a federal crime scene, and Marla had put my fingerprints on the murder weapon. The interrogation room at the federal field office did not look like the ones on television. It was smaller, smellier, and the coffee in the styrofoam cup in front of me tasted like battery acid. I sat next to Grandpa Walt, who looked as immovable as a mountain range. Across from us sat Agent Miller and a forensic accountant named Sarah, whose laptop seemed to be the only colorful thing in the gray room. Agent Miller did not waste time with pleasantries. He slid a piece of paper across the metal table. It was a timeline, a simple, black line with timestamps marked in military time. Ms. Phillips, Agent Miller said, tapping the paper with a pen. I need you to look at the sequence of events on the day of your accident. This is critical. I looked. The timeline was precise. 1400 hours and 30 minutes. The timestamp of the 911 call reporting my crash at the intersection of 4th and Main. 1400 hours and 45 minutes ambulance dispatch. 1500 hours, arrival at Ridgeview Trauma Center. Okay, I said, my voice steady despite the thumping of my heart. This is when the SUV hit me. This is when I was bleeding. Now look earlier, Agent Miller said. Look at 1200 hours, noon, 2.5 hours before the crash. I moved my eyes to the left of the timeline. 1200 hours and 15 minutes. Logan attempt to Bella Phillips primary checking. Successful. 1200 hours and 20 minutes. Request sent to increase daily transfer limit from $5,000 to $50,000. 1200 hours and 30 minutes. Address change request for two-factor authentication codes. Change from text message to an email address. marlasutton@bizgmail.com. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She didn't do this after I got hurt, I whispered. She did this while I was at work. She was doing this while I was eating lunch. Correct, Agent Miller said. Your mother was preparing to liquidate your accounts 2 hours before you were hit by that car. She was setting the stage. She was raising the ceiling so she could pull everything out in one massive transaction. I looked at Grandpa. His face was grim. It means the accident was not the trigger, Grandpa said, his voice low. It was just an accelerant. She was going to rob you anyway. Bella, she was just waiting for a moment when you were distracted. The coma was just a lucky break for her. A lucky break, I repeated. My mother saw my broken ribs and thought, finally, a window of opportunity. There is more, the forensic accountant, Sarah, chimed in. She turned her laptop screen toward us. We traced the offshore activity Agent Miller mentioned on the phone, the shell company in the Cayman Islands. It is called Blue Heron Holdings. It sounds generic, but we found a link. She clicked a file. 10 years ago, Sarah said, a woman named Helen Phillips passed away. Your great-aunt? Aunt Helen, I said. Yes, she died of natural causes. She was 90. Before she died, Sarah continued, Marla Sutton had power of attorney over Helen's estate. We pulled the old records. There were transfers consistent. Large transfers going to a medical consulting firm that doesn't exist. That money eventually ended up in Blue Heron Holdings. My stomach dropped. She stole from Aunt Helen. We thought Helen just spent it all on care. Marla told us Helen needed expensive specialists. Marla laundered Helen's life savings, Agent Miller corrected. She used the same playbook. She isolated the victim, took control of the finances under the guise of care, and siphoned the money offshore. Nobody investigated because Helen was old and senile. But you are young, you fought back, and because you filed that tax whistleblower report, you gave us the key to unlock the whole history. She is a serial predator, Grandpa said. She doesn't have family, she has targets. The door to the interrogation room opened. A young agent stuck his head in. Agent Miller, Mr. Hargrove is here. He says he wants to amend his statement. Agent Miller smiled. It was a shark's smile. Bring him in. Cal Hargrove, the slick lawyer from the hospital, looked like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. His suit was wrinkled. He wasn't wearing a tie. When he saw me, he flinched. He sat down at the far end of the table, avoiding eye contact with Grandpa. I didn't know about the Cayman accounts. Hargrove blurted out before anyone even asked a question. I swear, I was hired to handle the domestic trust and the power of attorney. I am a probate lawyer, not a money launderer. Then why was your name on a draft document for Blue Heron Holdings? Agent Miller asked, holding up another piece of paper. Hargrove went pale. She asked me to review a structure. She said it was for international investments. I never signed it. I told her it looked risky. Look, I am cooperating. I gave you the affidavit about the hospital incident. We need more, Grandpa growled. We need to know what she told you before you walked into that hospital room. Did she know Bella was hurt? Hargrove swallowed hard. She called me at 3 o'clock. She didn't sound scared. She sounded excited. She said, It happened. She is out. Meet me at Ridgeview. Bring the biometric kit. She had the kit in her car. Mr. Phillips. She had bought it weeks ago on Amazon. She kept it in her trunk, waiting for a reason to use it. I closed my eyes. She kept it in her trunk, while she hugged me at family dinners, while she played with my daughter. She had a device in her car designed to bypass my security, just waiting for me to be unconscious. She told me, Hargrove continued, his voice trembling, that if we could get the transfer done within the hour, she could move the funds before the bank's fraud algorithm flagged the location change. She was racing the algorithm, not the doctors. Thank you. Mr. Hargrove, Agent Miller said coldly. You can wait in the hall. Do not leave the building. Hargrove scrambled out like a rat escaping a sinking ship. We have enough for a warrant, Agent Miller said to us. But there is one piece missing. To make the fraud charges stick specifically to the rearing fees claim and negate any defense she might have about verbal contracts. We need to prove intent. We need to prove she knew she was stealing, not just collecting a debt. My phone buzzed. It was Tessa. I looked at Grandpa. It is the sister. Answer it, Grandpa said. Put it on speaker. I tapped the screen. Tessa, I am with the agents. I did it. Tessa's voice was shaking, but it was clear. I did what you asked. I went to the house. She was drinking. She was ranting about you. She didn't know I was recording. Send it, I said. A moment later, an audio file appeared in my messages. I handed the phone to Agent Miller. He plugged it into the laptop speakers. The room filled with the sound of ice clinking in a glass. And then, Marla's voice. It was slurred, angry, and terrifyingly familiar. Ungrateful little brat, Marla's voice sneered from the recording. After all the time I spent on her, and now she thinks she can cut me off. She is nothing without me. I made her. But Mom, Tessa's voice, timid and small. Maybe we should just stop. Bella is really mad. She has lawyers. Let her have lawyers, Marla laughed. A harsh, barking sound. I have the system. She doesn't understand. Tessa, it is a numbers game. You just have to find the pressure point. I should have pressed harder on the thumb. If I had just gotten that unlock, the money would be in the Caymans by now, and she could scream all she wanted. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Once the money flows here, it is mine. It doesn't matter what she signed. It matters who holds the cash. But it is her money, Tessa whispered. It is my money, Marla roared. The audio spiked. She is my asset. I grew her. You don't pay the apple tree for the apples. Tessa, you just pick them. She is just an apple tree that learned how to talk. The recording ended. The silence in the room was absolute. You don't pay the apple tree, Agent Miller repeated, looking at the laptop with disgust. That is not a defense. That is a confession of dehumanization. Is it enough? I asked, my voice hollow. It is enough, Agent Miller said. It proves she viewed you as a financial instrument, not a person. It proves premeditation to seize assets regardless of consent, and combined with the offshore accounts, Ms. Phillips, we are not just freezing her accounts, we are seizing them. We left the field office an hour later. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the pavement. I felt exhausted, not just in my body, but in my soul. I had just listened to my mother call me an apple tree to be harvested. But the war wasn't over. Marla had one weapon left: the court of public opinion. By the time I got home, my phone was exploding, not with texts from Marla, but from cousins I hadn't seen in 5 years, from aunts who lived 3 states away. Ping. Bella, how could you do this to your mother? She is distraught. Ping. I heard you left Marla destitute. She says you stole her retirement. Ping. Family helps family. Bella, you should be ashamed. She had launched the smear campaign. She was calling everyone, spinning a sob story about the ungrateful daughter who got a little money and kicked her poor, sick mother to the curb. She was weaponizing the family tree. Grandpa watched me reading the messages. Don't engage, he warned. That is what she wants. She wants a screaming match. She wants you to look unstable. I know, I said. I sat down on the couch, my daughter sleeping peacefully in her room. I composed a single email. I added every single family member to the BCC line, every aunt, every cousin, every distant relative Marla was trying to recruit. Subject regarding recent family matters, to everyone reaching out. I understand you have been told a specific version of events regarding my relationship with my mother. I will not be discussing the details of my personal finances or the ongoing federal investigation in a group chat. However, please be advised that as of this morning, Marla Sutton is the subject of an active criminal inquiry regarding identity theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. Any assets she is claiming I stole are currently frozen by federal authorities, not by me. If you have further questions, please direct them to Agent Miller at the Inspector General's office or my legal counsel. I will not be responding to personal messages on this topic. Regards, Bella. I hit send. It was the digital equivalent of dropping a microphone and walking off stage. I didn't defend myself. I didn't cry. I just pointed to the badge. The text stopped immediately. The silence that followed was heavy, but peaceful. 2 days passed. I went back to work. I wore a scarf to hide the bruising on my neck. I focused on my spreadsheets. I picked up my daughter from daycare. I lived my life. I was tired. My ribs still ached when it rained. But for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. The shoe had dropped, and I was still standing. On the 3rd day, I got a text from Tessa. Tessa. She is at the grocery store, the one on 5th. She just tried to buy wine and steaks. Me and Tessa. The card declined, not the try again decline. The Merchant Contact Bank decline. She tried 3 different cards. She tried the Amex. She tried the secret visa. They all came back dead. Tessa. She screamed at the cashier. She threw the steak on the conveyor belt. Security had to escort her out. She is in the parking lot now, crying in her car. She called me. She asked if I had $50. I looked at the text. I imagined Marla, standing in the parking lot of a Whole Foods, realizing that the ATM was finally, permanently out of order. Did you give it to her? I typed. Tessa. I told her I had to pay my own rent. I smiled. A small, sad smile. Good girl, I whispered. When I got home that evening, there was a letter in my mailbox. It wasn't a bill. It was a thick envelope with a Department of Justice seal. I opened it at the kitchen table. Grandpa was there, eating a sandwich. What is it? He asked. I read the header. Notice of Asset Forfeiture and Seizure, Case number 22 CR 8990. Defendant Marla J. Sutton, property, subject to seizure 1, residential property located at 442 Oakwood Drive, 2, 2024 Lexus RX, 350. 3. Investment accounts held under Blue Heron Holdings. Reason properties obtained through proceeds of wire fraud and money laundering activity. I lowered the paper. They are taking the house, I said. They are taking her condo. They are taking the car. She bought them with stolen money, Grandpa said, taking another bite of his sandwich. That is how it works. You can't keep the trophies if you stole the gold. Where will she go? I asked. It was an instinctual question, the old programming trying to fire one last time. She has options, Grandpa said. She can get a public defender. She can apply for public housing. She can get a job. He looked at me. She is an adult, Bella. She is 52 years old. She is not your child. I looked at the letter again. Defendant Marla J. Sutton. I stood up and walked to the fridge. I took a magnet, a little plastic star my daughter had painted, and I stuck the forfeiture notice right in the center of the refrigerator door. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder. You are right, I said. She is not my child, and I am not her bank. I turned to Grandpa. Do you want more coffee? I think we need to celebrate. I just saved $4,200 this month. Make it decaf, Grandpa grinned. We have a court date tomorrow. The accident had been meant to end me. It was supposed to be the moment I disappeared and became a ghost in my own life. Instead, it was the moment I finally woke up. The car crash broke my bones, but it fixed my spine. And as for Marla, she wanted to be taken care of, and she would be. The federal government is very good at providing housing, food, and clothing. It just requires an orange jumpsuit and a shared cell. The end of a war does not sound like a cannon blast. It sounds like the click of a ballpoint pen on a plea agreement. The final conference room was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of floor wax. Marla Sutton sat on the opposite side of the mahogany table. She was not wearing her usual silk blouse. She was wearing a gray sweatshirt, and for the first time in my life, she looked her age. She looked 52 years old and tired. There were no diamonds on her wrists. There was no expensive handbag on the floor next to her. Those had already been tagged as evidence. Agent Miller placed a single sheet of paper in the center of the table. It was a printout of a text message. I raised you. You pay me. That was it. That was the smoking gun. Marla stared at the paper. She tried to look away, but there was nowhere to go. Her new lawyer, a public defender who looked overworked and unimpressed by her theatrics, leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Marla flinched. The government accepts the plea, Agent Miller said, his voice devoid of emotion, in exchange for a full allocation of assets to satisfy the forfeiture order, and testimony regarding the offshore partners in Blue Heron Holdings. The prosecution agrees to a sentence recommendation of 48 months in a minimum security federal facility, followed by 3 years of supervised release. 48 months. 4 years. Marla looked at me then. Her eyes were not wet with remorse. They were dry and hard, like stones. She was looking for the weak spot. She was looking for the daughter who used to apologize for existing. Bella, she said, Her voice was raspy. "You are really going to let them send me to prison over money? I am your mother." I looked at her. I sat next to Grandpa Walt, whose hand was resting on the table, a heavy, reassuring anchor. "It is not over money, Mom," I said softly. "It is over the thumb. It is over the biometric scanner. It is over the fact that you tried to erase me." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stated the fact. Marla opened her mouth to argue, perhaps to scream about her rearing fees one last time. But then she looked at the text message on the table, the proof of her own transaction. She closed her mouth. She picked up the pen. Click, she signed, and just like that, the subscription was canceled, permanently. The weeks that followed were a blur of logistics, but they were the most satisfying logistics of my life. I watched from a distance as the machinery of justice dismantled the stage set Marla had built. The condo on Oakwood Drive, the one with the marble countertops and the view she loved to brag about, was seized. It was not a home. It was a crime scene of financial fraud. The U.S. Marshals put a lockbox on the door. It was sold at auction 2 months later to pay back the creditors she had defrauded in my name. The Lexus was towed. I saw the picture of it on a government auction site. It looked small and sad without her behind the wheel, just another piece of metal bought with stolen labor. Tessa did not go to prison. She took the deal I offered. She pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor count of credit fraud and agreed to 5 years of probation. But the real sentence wasn't the probation officer she had to check in with every month. The real sentence was reality. I met Tessa for coffee one last time to sign the restitution paperwork. She looked exhausted. She was wearing a uniform from a local diner. "I have to work double shifts," Tessa complained, stirring her coffee aggressively. "Do you know how hard it is to stand on your feet for 10 hours and the tips are terrible? I can barely make the restitution payments to you." "Welcome to the world, Tessa," I said, taking a sip of my tea. "It is called earning a living. I have been doing it since I was 16. "It is not fair," she muttered. "Mom said we were set." "Mom lied," I said. "And now you are free. You are tired, but you are free. No one is using your name to launder money. You should be thanking me." Tessa didn't thank me. She just grabbed her check and walked out to catch the bus. She had a long road ahead of her, but at least it was her road. She wasn't a passenger in Marla's getaway car anymore. I drove home that afternoon feeling a strange sensation in my chest. I kept waiting for the guilt to hit me. I kept waiting for that crushing, suffocating feeling that I had done something wrong, that I was a bad daughter. But it never came. Instead, I felt light. It was a physical sensation, as if gravity had loosened its grip on my shoulders. I realized that for 30 years, I had been carrying a backpack filled with stones, and Marla had been the one putting them in there, one by one. Guilt, duty, fear, obligation. Now, the backpack was gone. I could breathe. I could stand up straight. My ribs were healing, knitting back together stronger than before, and so was my spirit. Grandpa Walt came over that evening with a bottle of sparkling apple cider and a folder. "The audit is closed," he announced, placing the folder on the table where we had spent so many sleepless nights. "The Department of Justice has finished the asset distribution." He opened the folder. Inside was a check. It wasn't for $500,000. The government takes its cut, and the lawyers take theirs. And much of what Marla stole had been spent on cruises and dinners that couldn't be refunded. But it was a check for $112,000. "Restitution," Grandpa said. "It is from the sale of the condo and the liquidation of the Blue Heron account. It is not everything she took, Bella, but it is yours. It is clean." I touched the check. $112,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was justice. It was rearing fees returned to the sender. "It is enough," I said. "I didn't buy a Lexus. I didn't buy a marble condo. I used the money to put a down payment on a small house in a quiet neighborhood. It had a porch. It had a backyard with a swing set for my daughter. It had a front door with a deadbolt that only I had the key to. I put the rest into a 529 college savings plan for my daughter. I made sure her name was the only beneficiary. I made sure the trustee was an institutional bank, with instructions that no family member could ever touch it. And I bought one luxury item. I bought a new phone, a new number, a number that Marla Sutton did not have, a number that would never ring at 2 a.m. with a demand for cash. The first night in the new house, I lay in bed. The window was open, letting in the cool night air. It was silent. No monitors beeping. No angry texts vibrating against the nightstand. Just the sound of the wind in the trees and the steady, rhythmic breathing of my daughter in the next room. I slept for 8 hours. It was the deepest sleep of my life. 3 days before Marla was scheduled to report to the Federal Correctional Facility, my old phone, which I had kept active only for legal correspondence, rang. It was a collect call from a county detention center where she was being processed. I hesitated. Grandpa was sitting on the porch, whittling a piece of wood. He looked at me through the screen door and nodded. "Your choice." I accepted the call. "Bella." Marla's voice was small. The anger was gone, replaced by a terrified vulnerability. It was the voice she used to manipulate me. But this time, the fear sounded real. "Bella, I am scared. They say the facility is cold, and I don't have any money for the commissary. Can you—" She stopped herself. Old habits die hard, but even she knew she couldn't finish that sentence. "I can't send you money, Mom," I said. "The trust forbids it. Remember the poison pill clause. If I send you a dime, I lose everything." "Right," she whispered. "Right. The trust." There was a long silence. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "After everything. Do you hate your mother?" I looked out the window. I saw my daughter playing in the grass, chasing a butterfly. I saw the sun hitting the roof of the house that I owned, truly owned. "No, Mom," I said honestly. "I don't hate you. Hate takes too much energy, and I am done spending my energy on you." "Then what is this?" she asked. "If it is not hate, it is retirement." I said, "I resigned. Mom, I am not your banker anymore. I am not your ATM. I am just Bella, and Bella doesn't work for you." "But I am your family," she pleaded, a desperate whisper. "I know," I said, "and I hope you find peace. But you will have to find it for free." I hung up the phone. I didn't block the number. I didn't need to. I just turned the device off and put it in a drawer. I walked out onto the porch. The evening air was crisp, hinting at the coming autumn. Grandpa Walt was sitting in the rocking chair, the wood shavings curling around his boots. He looked up at me. His eyes were blue and sharp, the eyes of a man who had seen the storm and steered the ship through it. "She called?" Grandpa asked. "She called," I said. I sat down on the steps, wrapping my cardigan tighter around me. And nothing," I said. "It is done." Grandpa nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the power of attorney document, the one move that had saved my life. "You know," Grandpa said, looking at the paper, "everyone thinks the move was me walking into that hospital room. They think it was the big dramatic moment with the security guards." He shook his head. "But the move was months ago," he said. "The move was when you sat at my kitchen table, crying, and you finally signed this paper. The move was you deciding to trust someone who actually loved you." He struck a match and lit the corner of the paper. We watched as the flame curled the edge. Turning the white page into black ash, we didn't need it anymore. The danger was past. "I didn't lose my mother, Grandpa," I whispered, watching the ash float away on the wind. "I never really had one. I just had a bill collector who looked like her." "You gained something, though," Grandpa said, pointing to the yard where my daughter was laughing. "Yeah," I smiled, the tears finally coming, but they were warm, healing tears. "I gained my life back." I stood up and walked down the steps. I picked up my daughter. She felt heavy and solid in my arms. A real, living weight of love that asked for nothing in return. I looked back at Grandpa on the porch of our paid-for house, under the sky that belonged to no one and everyone. I didn't lose a family, I said to the wind. I just lost a payroll. And for the first time in 30 years, the balance was finally zero. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a journey through betrayal and justice, and I hope it reminded you that your worth is not defined by what you can give to others. If you are listening to this, I would love to know where you are from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always want to know how far this story is traveling. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel Lucy Revenge Stories, like the video, and support us by pressing the hype button so that this story can be heard by even more people. If you have ever felt like you were just a financial resource to the people who were supposed to love you, comment the word "enough" below. Because sometimes, the story of your life truly begins the moment you dare to say enough.